Welcome, everyone, and like to welcome all of our guests this evening, either in person or watching on TV and online, to the Yountville Town Council meeting for Tuesday, April 5th, 2016. If you could please, as a reminder, make sure that cell phones are turned on to silent or off so as to not disrupt our proceedings. Move ahead to roll call, please.
Councilmember Mueller.
Here.
Councilmember Durham.
Here.
Councilmember Dornbecker.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hall.
Here.
Mayor Dunbar.
Here. We have a couple special guests from the California Veterans Home with us tonight, and I have asked if Barbara Bregoff, Jane Boot, and Jean Hicks would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I will make the point that you did, and I hate to use the word Trump, but you did trump our district attorney, who's also in the audience this evening. But we thought it was more important that you all led the pledge for us tonight. So thank you very much.
Did you say Trump?
Yes, I tried to think of another term, but next up, adoption of tonight's agenda. I don't think we have any changes, so is there a motion to adopt the agenda as is?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous. We will move ahead to invite the district attorney up to the front of our, to the podium, and I'm going to make a proclamation regarding National Crime Victims' Rights Week. So thank you for joining me there.
Thank you, and joining me at the podium is Yuka Kamishi, our Victim Witness Services Manager.
Great. Welcome. This is a proclamation recognizing National Crime Victims' Rights Week for April 10 through 15th, 2016. Whereas in 1981, President Reagan first declared Crime Victims' Rights Week to help focus the nation's attention on the impact of crime on victims. And whereas crime can touch the lives of anyone regardless of their backgrounds, and many victims face challenges in finding appropriate services. Whereas crime imposes devastating emotional, physical, financial, spiritual, and social impact not only on victims and survivors, but also their family members, friends, neighbors, schools, and the entire community. Whereas this year's theme, Serving Victims, Building Trust, Restoring Hope, emphasizes the importance of honoring the rights of victims, providing and locating necessary and appropriate support and assistance, and helping to restore their hope in the process. Whereas the Napa County District Attorney's Office Victim Services Division is joining forces with victim services providers, criminal justice agencies, and concerned citizens throughout the County of Napa and America to raise awareness of victims' rights by observing National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Now therefore be it resolved that I, John F. Dunbar, as Mayor of the Town of Yountville, do hereby proclaim the week of April 10th through the 15th, 2016 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week, and reaffirm Napa County's commitment to respect and enforce victims' rights, to address their needs during National Crime Victims' Rights Week and throughout the year, and to express our appreciation for those victims and crime survivors who have turned personal tragedy into a motivating force to improve our response to victims of crime and build a more just community. So thank you very much for representing that effort.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. And if you'd like to go ahead and just make a few comments, you're both welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Dunbar, Vice Mayor Hall, members of the council, and members of the public. First of all, just driving up here, and I had the pleasure of being here over the weekend during Yountville Live and seeing the vines leafing out and the beautiful afternoon we have. It's hard to fathom when we start talking about victims of crime that we have that we have to talk about victims of crime. In a perfect world, we wouldn't do that. And many of us work very hard to do everything we can to help victims in a system that isn't always victim-friendly. And I think that's the huge changes that have happened since 1981 when President Reagan first recognized the name victim and rights in the same sentence, that victims do have rights, and first and foremost the right to be not only a survivor but hopefully in our community a thriver. And so that's something that we try to do at the Napa County District Attorney's Office and through our Victim Services Division, to do everything possible to help people through a very difficult situation, and so that they're able to move forward. So it's in that spirit that I am proud to accept this proclamation on behalf of my office, and to thank you for that. I also want to say a couple quick words, and then I'm going to turn over to Ms. Kamishi to tell you about a very special event we have coming up on Monday evening that will help commemorate the week. Later this month, we're going to have a 2-day study. It's a study tour of our consultants toward developing a family justice center in Napa County. And this is very much in line with the theme of National Victim Rights Week, because this will be essentially a one-stop shop for victims, so that rather than when someone comes in the door telling them that now you have to go down the street here, you have to go across town there, to 10, 15 different locations to get services, whether it's to report a crime, whether it's to get counseling, mental health counseling, whether to get legal aid. The idea is that we co-locate under a single roof. So we've been working toward that goal in the last year with the support of the Gasser Foundation financing our feasibility study. We have a 2-day session coming up the end of the month, and on the morning of April 27th, Wednesday morning at 8:30, we'll be having a community forum, and definitely want to invite all of you there to, and everybody here, to learn more about what a family justice center is and what it can be in our community. And then we're going to have meetings to let our consultants better know our community. Then they'll be back again in July, and we'll have 2 days of just really rolling up our sleeves in a strategic planning session. So this is sort of a vision we have. We have some funding that's available to our county to help victims of crime, $244,000 over 2 years, which is not a competitive grant. And one of the first things we're looking at doing with that money is purchasing a 9-passenger handicap available van to particularly help victims in the outlying areas up valley, including Yountville and further up the valley, who may not otherwise be able to get down to services in Napa or even to file papers and things. So that's kind of looking at the future of how we can better assist victims. But turning to Monday night's kickoff, let me ask Yuka Kamishi to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you again for the proclamation. We're excited to tell you about our kickoff event on Monday evening at 5:30 at New Technology High School in Napa. We will be screening a documentary film of collected voice of people in Napa County, from high school students to senior advocates, the police officer to victim services providers, as to what we are doing in Napa County to help crime victims, and also how we can do better and how Napa County can do better. So we will be showing this film once again Monday evening at 5:30 at New Tech High School. I know it's a little bit of a way for Yountville citizens to come, but we encourage you to come and join us to honor crime victims' rights. On a day-to-day basis, the Victim Services Division staff are very busy to assist the crime victims. Last fiscal year, we served over 2,000 crime victims throughout Napa County, and we are continuing to be very busy with assisting them, reaching out to them, and making sure they know their rights and help them go through the criminal justice system. So thank you again for the recognizing the National Crime Victims' Rights Week.
Thank you. A quick question. Are tickets required, or can people just show up for the event on Monday?
I'm sorry, I didn't clarify. It is a public event for free to attend.
Okay.
And Mayor, we're hoping some of you can come, and if you believe it would be helpful to bring closer to the Yountville community, we could talk about bringing a showing up here to the community center or somewhere at a future date.
Okay, great.
Again, thank you once again for your time and your recognition today.
You're welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you. We're going to move ahead to another proclamation for this evening, and I'm going to invite our special guest from the Veterans Home to join me at the podium, Gene Hicks, along with Barbara Bregoff and Jane Boot, and I will present this proclamation recognizing April 13th as Women's Veterans of World War II Day. Great. Try to read fast so we don't have to stand here too long. This is a proclamation declaring April 13, 2016 as Women Veterans of World War II Day. Whereas more than 350,000 women served during World War II, most of them nurses or doing clerical and support work. Whereas there were 5 major branches that women served in, including SPARS, WAVES, WASPs, WACs, and WACs. WAAC. Okay, and the Marines, including, not excluding any, but especially the Marines.
Marine aviation.
Since you're here representing. Whereas the SPARS were the Women Coast Guard, created in November of 1942. The WAVES were formed on July 30, 1942, and as many as 100,000 women served as WAVES throughout the remainder of the war. The WAVES, women accepted for volunteer emergency service, were women that served in the Navy and Marines. Whereas in the WASPs, Women's Air Force Service pilots, women flew planes just as the men did. They had to have a pilot's license and volunteer for a 6-month training program. There were so many women applying for the Air Force that many were not accommodated. In 1944, they were disbanded, and it was not until 1977 that 1,074 WASP achieved veteran status. The Women's Army Auxiliary Corps were established on May 15, 1942. On July 1, 1943, Congress abolished the WAAC and in turn formed the WAC, Women's Army Corps, which granted women the same pay and rank titles as male reservists. These women served in many positions that normally men would do. Whereas the Marine Corps Women's Reserves admitted women in February 1943 and demobilized in September 1946 and served in key positions in administration, training and supply, and played an important role in support of the combat troops while actual fighting was going on. Whereas 27 women World War II veterans still live at the Yountville Veterans Home, and whereas on April 13, 2016, there will be a tribute to those brave World War II women veterans at their annual Yountville Women Veterans Luncheon. Now therefore be it resolved that I, John F. Dunbar, Mayor of the Town of Yountville, do declare Wednesday, April 13th, 2016 as Women Veterans of World War II Day in Yountville, California. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I was an Army nurse, and I believe that our Corps was established in 1901.
Would you like to make any comment?
Oh, I was in Marine Aviation. In the last year I was in, I was the NCO in charge of station operations in Santa Barbara, where the returned veterans came back after the war, and I worked with Joe Foss. You know Joe Foss in Boyington's Black Sheep. I worked with them.
Excellent. And I understand you're 97 years old?
Yes, sir.
And Jane, you're 96. Well, thank you for your lifetime of service to your country.
My name is Jean Hicks. I'm president of the Women Veterans of Yountville Group. And I just wanted to say, of the 27 World War II women veterans that we have, 7 of those ladies, including Jane and Barbara, are still living independently at the home. Only 20 of the ladies have moved up to skilled nursing, assisted living, or memory care. But 7 of them, like Jane and Barbara, are still kicking. And right, exactly. We really do appreciate this proclamation and this honor. Thank you so much, John.
Well, the privilege is all of ours, so thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And we already cleared it up that they're not required to stay through the entire budget conversation later on. But you're welcome to. Next, we're going to move on to public comment. So this is the time when any member of the public can speak on an item that is not on our agenda. And I know that we have a couple of our residents that are here to do just that. Welcome.
Before the budget talks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. Wow, I can't even say enough. My name is Nancy Mercer. I'm 67 years old and live in Gateway Estates. I don't usually sound this hoarse, but of course today I would. I understand I have 3 minutes. I will make it fast, though I do understand someone's allowed 5. We got a timer. Anyway, I live in Gateway Estates, as I said, with my husband Steve. And we have 2 middle-aged sons who live in Napa with their families. We're blessed to have them there. My story is this. I was an ER nurse for a while, went back to school, became a clinical psychologist, and for 25 years practiced in Davis in a private practice as a clinical psychologist, and retired about 5 years ago. My story is 3 years ago, will be 3 years on Thanksgiving, my entire family was down visiting down in San Luis Obispo. I woke up Thanksgiving morning. I tried to get out of bed and discovered that my entire right leg and my belly was like electricity had come through. And my leg was entirely flaccid. It was like a cooked noodle. I could not move it. I really didn't even know where it was. If any of you are nurses, you maybe know. I had no proprioception. I would run over it with a wheelchair. I was very fortunate to get really good rehab. I regained my motor function, mostly. But what I was left with is a neurological issue called paresthesias. And I live 24/7, never goes away, with pins and needles, all the way up to here. As you can imagine, when your leg falls asleep, I live with that. I live with both feet feeling like they're encased in a block of ice. I feel like I'm in a vice. The neurologists tell me it's just sequelae, not just, but sequelae of my spinal cord stroke. You can have that. At least I didn't lose my brain. That's the good thing. So I kind of have with meds. I had been treated with narcotics and neurological medicine called Neurontin or gabapentin, which makes me extremely stupid. I mean, my husband had to take over the checkbook after 50 years of doing it myself. Very distressing. About a year ago, it was suggested to me that I might try marijuana. It was not only suggested by me, by a few relatives, but also by my medical practitioners at Kaiser. They couldn't prescribe it, but they said, go for it. A lot of people, as they get older and they have various maladies, it can be very helpful. And so I tried it. It relieves. I tried edibles. My husband makes very good pot brownies. Nobody should know this. But the marijuana gives me more relief than I've had from the narcotics and from the gabapentin. and I'm still on everything, trying to sort this out. But I urge you, as a senior member who likes to we try to live on our Social Security, and I would just urge the, what are you called? Council. See, you have a pen. I would urge the council to consider just very limited marijuana growth. We don't have much backyard to grow it in anyway. It would certainly be difficult for many of us to grow inside, and it's expensive. And yes, I have a marijuana card. So thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for sharing your comments.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mercer.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me come back again. Last time I was here, I talked a little bit about what I felt about medical marijuana, but what I didn't tell you was the reason we prefer to grow it outside. We can't afford to grow it inside. The cost of lights, fans, filters, electricity, it would run about $300 to $400 a quarter just to grow. Growing outside with the sun is the way to go for us and for most growers. We're only going to grow a couple plants if we're allowed to. I think you can control this in town. I understand your concern. We don't want a field of grapes next to a field of marijuana. But I believe you can control that without taking us and causing us grief and harm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as I shared with the Mercers and we've discussed previously at our April 19th meeting, we'll be addressing the issue in much greater detail. Any other members of the public here to speak on an item not on our agenda? Welcome. We always have the most vertical members of the public speak just before the less vertical members of the public.
But hold on one second. I was not expecting this marijuana thing. My name is Zoe Harris, and I live in Yountville for 18 years. I don't know, I didn't know the discussion about marijuana yet, but I have children, and I don't think having a marijuana thing here in our town will be appropriate for children. So I just have to say that. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry about your your help. But I'm here just to support my daughter, Myelene. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Myelene Harris. I'm an 8th grader. I'm going to start a teen book club. We will have our first meeting on May 11th from 4 to 5 at the Yountville Library. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public like to speak on that item? It's good that we have our Library Commission representative here to know about the literary program. I'm sure he already did. Seeing no other members of the public coming forward, we'll move ahead from public comment to our consent calendar. And we have, let's see, 4 items on consent for consideration. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Mercer. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion or action on the consent calendar?
I make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, ladies. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to presentation of said Library Commissioner, Scott Owens, to give us an update on the situation with the Napa County Library. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, council members, staff, and guests. I'm Scott Owens, Library Commissioner, Town of Yountville, appointed July 2014 and reappointed February 2015. I have attended all commission meetings since my appointment. It is my commitment and role to ensure an ongoing flow of information among the library, the community, and elected officials. Thanks for the opportunity tonight to provide this annual report of commission activities. Staff. The library is staffed by a dedicated team of professionals. Ruth Barney, Kiki Revoir, who share their talent and good nature and create a welcoming and intellectually stimulating environment. Yountville is the heart of the Napa Valley, and Kiki and Ruth are the heart of the Yountville Library. Our programs include family story time on Wednesdays, children's craft days, first Saturday of each month, adult craft days, and the adult book group. Also, there's Read to a Dog. And as we just heard from Maya, there's planning underway for a teen program, planning with Yountville teens in early May. Our displays throughout the year in the library are artistic and interactive. They've included Mother's Day hats, French poodles for Bastille Day, Dia de los Muertos sugar skull making in October, model railroads in November, which is National Railroad Month, this by our super patron, Seth, and the holiday train in December, which sprung up from the model railroad. Next, please. Thank you. Our community. Volunteers are an asset to the library. Our volunteer hours keep the library open an extra 2 hours, that's 5 to 7 p.m. It is a successful and unique model, and there is great appreciation to Council Members Moeller and Dornbecker for implementing this in 2010 or 2012. The Napa County has enhanced its intake process for volunteers and created a new brochure to make it easier and more expeditious for those who are interested to become volunteers faster through fingerprinting, all kinds of authentication, but it's a quicker process now so people can volunteer as soon as they'd like to. And the Friends of the Library support the library through advocacy and funding of programming, for which we are grateful. Patrons come from beyond Yountville and from other parts of Napa County as well as the Bay Area. Our veterans community, residents of the Veterans Home of California in Yountville, make up almost 1/3 of Yountville residents. Many of the veterans have their own library card. I met recently with Jennifer Allen, senior library at the Vets Home, who informed me that there is a great desire for more veterans to have library cards, and Jennifer makes it possible for the veterans to use the interlibrary loan system by coming to the library once a week on Thursday, gathering books for the veterans and bringing them back to help get some items that they may not have in their own library, which is open 7 days a week. County-wide activities of the Library Commission this past year, since my last presentation, April 2015, included the 100th birthday celebration of the Napa County Library. Residents of Napa County celebrated the library's 100th birthday on February 9th. Elected officials from state and local offices, the state librarian, and commissioners were there. Centennial celebrations will continue throughout the year, and new library cards with the Centennial logo are only available this year. So those of you in the room who may not yet have your library card, this is a great chance to have a commemorative one. I encourage you to get one. And next year, 2017, will mark Yountville's 40th year, Yountville Library's 40th year, and 2016 marks 6 years in the current location on Washington Street. Art in the Library is a popular program at Napa Main Library with a monthly show of a Napa County artist. A reception happens each month as well, opportunity for patrons and residents to meet the artist. There's been discussion at the commission level to bring those art shows to the branches, namely American Canyon and here in Yountville, to circulate the art that is happening throughout the year. There's been some serious technology upgrades in Napa County Library system. We'll start with the library homepage and website. Retention and distribution of agenda and minutes are now available to the public 5 days prior to commission meetings in an electronic format on the web and posted at the library as well. This was of great interest to our Friends members, and I'm pleased to report that a timelier manner system is now in place to access that material. Polaris is the newly implemented catalog software that the County Board of Supervisors approved in August 2015. They authorized a new agreement with Innovative Interfaces Incorporated in Emeryville, California, for a new catalog system and interlibrary loan system. Polaris is that new system. It provides flexible and improved services at a lower cost, which means that cost savings can be applied to new materials, programs, and other library services throughout the county. Patrons now have the ability to manage library accounts directly, including paying fines and fees from home or the self-checkout stations. Polaris launched on time, and Napa County Library staff are working on some data issues. I have received comments from our Yountville Library patrons about both new systems, and library staff has responded promptly and thoroughly to the concerns. Link Plus is an enhanced interlibrary loan system that will come online this summer. It's a combined catalog of over 9 million unique books from participating libraries throughout California. Users from member libraries can electronically request an item not available in the regional system and have it delivered to them at their local library. We will have access to materials from over 60 academic and public libraries that hold over 11 million items. CENIC is another part of the technology upgrade, CENIC, which stands for the Corporation for Education Network Initiatives in California. It's at Wi-Fi traffic. It's a gigabyte network, an upgrade from Comcast Business Network to an enterprise-level network. It's a nonprofit. CENIC is a nonprofit that was formed in 1996 to provide high-performance, high-bandwidth networking services to California universities and research institutions. Through this corporation, representatives of all Californian public education systems combine their resources toward the operation, deployment, and maintenance of this system. CENIC connects to colleges, schools, and the internet. It's a huge network. The state librarian worked with the CENIC system to include the Napa County Library, applied for and received a grant to help with the cost. It's fully installed and less expensive and faster. The Yountville Library will be connected. A memo of understanding between the county library and the town of Yountville is currently in review. Programs and usage. I wanted to provide some statistics for our visitation, our programs. We have story time. It's family story time, and you see the children range from 6 months to 5 years of age. They're accompanied by an adult. We've had great attendance there. People come from around the county to attend there. Monthly craft programs, as I mentioned, on Saturday mornings. For October was our most popular, with the Dia de los Muertos sugar skull making, 113. Computer usage has been measured here at Yountville Library, and annual number 3,465, highest month September 2015. I am pleased to report that our door counter is now working. It's been an issue for a number of years that Public Works and the county library system was addressing. November 2015 was our first month of a tally, first month that we at the Commission saw a number other than 0 on our statistics sheet. And here at Yountville, we had 4,526 visitors to the library. Also in circulation, we had a total of 27,620 items in circulation in 2015. 87% of that number, 24,052 items, took place during Yountville Library's staffed hours, and 13%, that's 3,568 items, were checked out during volunteer hours from 5 to 7 p.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Thank you. And of particular interest and note is the library funding and financial model. It's an item of great interest to me. It was a goal that I spoke about last year in April, to gather more information about this, how this model works, the revenue sources, the opportunities for additional funding hours to Yountville. So currently, the formula is a circulation-based cost allocation model. The CAM is the acronym there. It's a formula to distribute hours equitably among the different locations. 4 locations: American Canyon, Calistoga, Yountville, and Napa, Maine. Yountville Station Library is unique. We're deemed a station based on population size, 3,000 to 6,000. The model provides 17 and a half hours of fully funded hours from the county to Yountville. We have an additional 2 hours in lieu of the free rent that Yountville provides the Napa County Library. The town pays for an additional 4.5 hours through an agreement for those extended hours, and adding on the 6 volunteer hours from 5 to 7 p.m., 2 hours a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it equals 30. However, I note that we are open 30 and a half, so I've yet to find out where that extra half hour comes from, but I'm on it. Future factors. The item has been discussed at commission meetings throughout the year about how this model might be updated. As I analyzed it and learned more, it is a model that was implemented in fiscal year 2011. It has remained constant since that time, although new tax revenue comes in to the county from property tax. The model remains the same since 2011. So it is static. We will be, as a commission, working on looking at that model in the spring and summer of 2016, and the library director will make some recommendations using the new inputs that the Polaris system provides for circulation beyond books, DVDs. We hope to include broader circulation for consideration in this model or an updated model, and I hope it will result in more hours. Again, we're unique because of the models we have developed as a town, as a council, as volunteers, to allow the Yountville Library to remain open longer than the 17 and a half hours that it receives funding for. In this model, the circulation-based cost allocation model, it is part of the agreement, the model itself, that even though the towns and the other branches will receive a certain number of hours, the library director then approaches the town council or the other governing bodies to ask if the towns would like to fund more hours. For instance, in Yountville, the current service hour is $9,003, and as you see, the town of Yountville pays for 4.5 additional hours. So that's an annual cost that the town pays, and these numbers vary based on the size of the other branches. For instance, American Canyon's hour is $16,000. So as a commission, in the coming months, we will be looking at this more closely, how this model might be more modernized. Initially, as I mentioned, the method's purpose is to distribute hours equitably among the different locations, and the staff will be looking at the factors that should go into this formula. Those might include circulation, visitors, online, and other usage. Online meaning ebooks and other items that are circulated, not physically, but from a Yountville-specific patron. So we'd like to receive that credit for circulation, especially if it is being factored in as a way to fund more hours in the community. And after the commission reviews and sees the formula, the library director will present to town council and other city councils after such a model is approved by the commission and the Napa County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to speak a little bit about the surveys. I say surveys in plural because there is the recent Yountville Community Survey, the Citizen Satisfaction Survey that I received, and I hope that all residents have received and filled out, that had a few questions about the library. So it's a great way to measure some of the citizen satisfaction through this survey that was sent out from the town hall. Also, Yountville Library Survey is coming soon. It's a library-specific survey in the town, and it's something that I spoke about last year in the annual report. It's a goal to receive some measurable information from the town about how residents use the library, what items are being checked out, and use the questions to even introduce some items that some residents may not yet be aware of. So I have been working on this survey very closely under the direction of Steve Rogers and expert assistance of Priya Nixon. We've been meeting regularly, and I understand and hope that we'll be announcing this survey in the coming days. Also, the Napa County Library Survey is something that the Commission has been speaking about as well, and we as a Commission will be meeting later this year to do a county-wide survey specific to library usage county-wide. Thank you.
A very thorough report. Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing all the data that helps us understand exactly what's happening, not only in our branch, but throughout the county. So thank you. Questions from the council about the report? Vice Mayor?
Thank you so much for the report. I took the time while you were talking about the library hours in Yountville, and I know I've talked with others about, the fact that, we do have volunteer friends of the Yountville Library that are willing to participate and do the extra hours to keep the library open. So I flicked to the website for Napa County, and I see that every library, with the exception of Yountville, is open on Friday. I wonder if that's not something that, as you go back and are discussing with your colleagues and peers, at a bare minimum, I think we need to try to evaluate how we do that, but that's hopefully something you can carry the torch on to some extent.
Sure, it is something that we as a commission have spoken about. Fridays would be a great day for the library to be open. Personally, it's the day that I usually work remotely here in Yountville, and there have been a number of days when I needed library services and the library is closed on Fridays. So I would hope that in the future our library could be open on such a day as Friday.
Yeah, I think what you would hear from every member on this council is that whatever we can do to support that, we would be happy to do, assuming we can figure that out. So
thank you.
I know the town manager is going to be putting this in his special notes.
Other questions
No,
of the
thank
presentation? I invite any members of the public that are here if they'd like to comment on the presentation or have any questions for clarification. Seeing nobody move forward. Thank you, Scott, very much. I'm looking forward to the survey result, all of the survey results, and it'll be interesting just to really drill down on some of the facts and details and opinions of the patrons. So
there is one more item I would like to add. I realize there's a governance update, especially for our high school representative on the town on the commission. We had one transition of our Calistoga commissioner, Shelby Valentine, she served 2 consecutive terms of 6+ years. So we have a new commissioner there, Jean DeLuca, representing Calistoga, and Diane Seba from American Canyon was the commission's first high school representative. So she joined the commission this past year. And last month we had the commission had its election of officers, and Patty Kruger, the commissioner from American Canyon, was elected vice chair, and I was elected chair of the Napa County Library Commission by my fellow commissioners.
I think in the journalist world that would be called burying the lead. That you should have led with that part. I know you're being modest, but congratulations on that. Clearly you're representing us well when you're respected by your peers like that. So
Well deserved.
congratulations on that. And thank you very much, and we'll be hearing from you again soon.
Yes.
Thank you, Scott.
We have no public hearing set for this evening, so we'll move on to our first of 2 administrative regular items. Consideration of adopting a resolution amending the fiscal year 2015-16 budget.
Thank you, Mayor Council. We have 2 items before you that are introductory items that helps to explain and provide guidance as we develop the budget.
Sorry, is your mic on? It didn't. There we go.
So we'd like to start with what we refer to in our budget parlance is the budget parameters and key assumptions. And this is the building block foundation for how staff will be putting together the budget. Our goal, as it always has, is to continue to develop and adopt a balanced budget while maintaining or improving our fund policy, the reserve amounts in our various funds. Funding the annual required contribution for OPEB, and we're now fully funding at 14%, and providing funding and future funding for town capital and infrastructure projects. As you know, I tend to use conservative numbers in our revenue projections. We use a rolling 3-year trend to guide revenue analysis and projections. We will periodically adjust those based on known circumstances. Yountville is unique in that 85% of our revenue stream comes from 3 primary revenue sources: TOT, sales tax, and property tax. We do not fund our operations out of a lot of miscellaneous revenue, user fees, and other taxes and receipts. We're very dependent on the tourists, the TOT. So as we go through tonight's workshop, we're going to move fairly quickly. You have a fairly detailed written report. So what I'd like you to do is, if I go too quickly, or Maria goes too quickly as we're going through this, please let us know, and we'll go into more detail. But for the audience at home, please know that they're looking at about a 20-page outline. So there's a lot of information, and this is how we build the budget. So we're talking about some key assumptions. So the first thing is that we will maintain our reserve policies. General fund emergency reserve will stay at 20%. That means based on the current $1,620,000, if our budget goes up, we make sure that that matches 20%. We use a revenue stabilization reserve, which has to be a minimum of 15% of our annual TOT revenue. It's currently $1,500,000. Insurance and claims retention, an assigned legal contingency, and an assigned budget contingency. So those are just reserves that we start with automatically, and then we add whatever's necessary. I'm probably not going to surprise you this year. We're already ahead of targets more than likely, so we'll be looking at adding or having a conversation with you about where you might want to apply those differently. All right, with that, I'm going to let Maria talk a little bit more about the fun stuff, where the money's coming from.
Okay, well, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to just cover a bit of our revenue projections and also later talk with you on the proposed budget adjustments for this fiscal year. So you'll hear me toggle back and forth between what we're projecting and what we're adjusting for the year. So transient occupancy tax, obviously a very important source of revenue here. For 16-17, we're estimating $6.4 million. Last year in 14-15, we finished at a bit higher at almost 6.6 million. So for the adopted budget this year, we're at 6.4 million, and we're going to estimate the same for 16-17. Actually, sorry, we're estimating we'll end this year with 6.5 million, which is 100,000 more, just based on the trend lines that we've been following. So just a tiny bit ahead of schedule, which is always good news. We know that future increases in transient occupancy tax are based on the incremental increases of our room rates, which are led by our hotels, and the increased occupancy during the slow season. So we need to understand that we have high occupancy on the weekends already, so slow season means during the week. So if we see an increase during the week, that's when we could see higher increases in transient occupancy tax. So at an 80% occupancy during the weekend is a pretty strong revenue stream. So we do need to be cognizant of the sustainability of our TOT. It's dependent on continued tourism industry and in the economy. And in addition to that, we need to know and be aware of the surrounding area as it's growing. We also have some other properties coming online in surrounding communities. Transitioning to sales tax for next fiscal year, we're expecting it to set the target at 1.1 million in line with our current estimates. And sales tax revenue in this year, we're expecting it to fall slightly short, which is why we're rolling it back just a little bit, mostly due to that extended luncheon closure for the French Laundry and the annex construction project that's gone longer than we expected. However, we do have good news on the sales tax front because we've had new sales tax generators like JCB Salon, which recently opened, the Arena Gallery, and Protea Restaurant, which is coming to open soon, and then Stuart Cellars Tasting Rooms and the reopening of Napa Style, which is coming this summer. So we've got some good things to look forward to. We've heard that the Restoration Hardware Lifestyle Gallery is not expected to open for this fiscal year, so we're not counting on sales tax revenue in that area. Property tax, our assessed value increased by 4.9% this year. That's per the certified valuations report that we received from the county. And so property tax is estimated at $1,160,000, and we're leaving that target for 16-17 in the same place. We know that the sale of the Bardesano Inn, which sold during calendar year 15, will increase the town's commercial tax base in 16-17, and we'll be watching that. And we also expect that the sale of the Vintage Estate property this spring in 2016 will increase the commercial tax base for fiscal year 17-18. So we'll be watching for those very closely. Consistent with what the state has reported to us, the state COPS grant is expected to be $100,000 this year. We use this allocation to offset the County of Napa Sheriff Department contract for law enforcement services. And that concludes the revenue component of this report. Our town manager will cover some keynote expenditures and other areas that are relevant to setting the parameters for the budget. And then after that, I will talk with you a bit about our budget adjustments for this fiscal year.
Okay, and before we move on, I want to just give the council an opportunity to ask questions of this phase. I saw the vice mayor get out his calculator, so let's start with Councilmember Durham. Did you have any questions?
These two will be a lot longer than I. So real quick, Bardesano, though, property tax from Bardesano, even though it's a leased property, the property wasn't sold, just the business was.
There is a calculation that is based on the land lease and the value of the, so we're waiting to see how that is assessed from the county.
Okay, and then secondly, with the TOT being such a large portion of our general fund, has anything ever been done with any of the, like, Smith Travel Research reports to further research exactly how the future plays out compared to the past, based on all of these reports that all the hotels in town participate
Well, I
in?
think there's two things I would answer, Councilmember Durham. We don't subscribe for any services. We do financially, and our team, we spend a lot of money tracking, and I track the trend lines, but we have not, as an agency, spent money using an external service to monitor trend lines. We do, and the unique thing, part of our insurance program is we do buy insurance so that if there was a revenue loss from a fire or an insured, that we have a revenue capacity. So there are some things that we do to try to protect that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Councilmember Mueller, your calculator's out as well.
Yeah, I had to add up a few numbers. First question has to do with what kind of discussions it's related to TOT. So we have one hotel we know is being sold, and there could be other changes. Did you have any discussion about what if, some of the rooms go offline to get remodeled, possible changes they might want to do? I mean, you have to kind of rub your crystal ball a little bit, but...
The short answer is, from conversations that we have, for example, we will be meeting with the new property owners, and it's entirely possible. Many of the hotel properties, and in fact, 2 years ago we went through a cycle with the Vintage Vintage Inn, where they pulled a number of rooms in sequence and renovate. So there's a time and place when they go that. So generally that's built in. If somebody does a major, larger host scale, we don't know that yet, and that's one of the reasons that number is plateauing. We also have one property right now that is in a holding pattern, which is the old Bordeaux house. So that's why, I've always promised you a flattening out and we're seeing that right now. So that's our way of being a little bit conservative, so that we don't just say, well, last year was 6.6, and we'll just think it's going to be 6.7 this year.
Well, no, I think my point really is that to even be a little more, did you have a discussion about even being more conservative, that, I think it's,
well,
in case things do change with the turnover.
I hesitate to do that until I have a better reason to. The reason I say that, it affects your overall revenue, and if you reduce your revenue, then you may have to make a allocation decision. Because if we know that a significant number of rooms will go off at a point in time, here's what I will also say. Typically, if it's a major change, it's going to come and modify, and then there's land use permit, so I'll have trend lines to adjust to it. I do know that there's some interest in potentially how to maximize, so if I see that, what I would say is some properties, for example, we've had conversations previously with the Bardesano about the 2 units or the 3 units there. So I fully anticipate that once they get together, we've had a very preliminary conversation. Had very preliminary conversations with the new management team that'll be coming in for the Vintage Villaggio. But I think it's, one, they're going to be very structured with how they take property offline, because they've got to make the payment. So it's not like they're going to just shut the property down at this scale. So I do think it's a caution, and I think it is something that we want to be aware of, and that's part of the dialogue that will continue. The good news that I would say is the preliminary indications are that the new operators of the Vintage Villaggio believe that there's some increased revenue opportunities by some, what I'm going to call, more modest refinement of the property that will not necessarily require. And what I mean by that is modernizing the rooms means you take a dozen off at a time and you roll it through, and they're offline maybe for a month, so it's not necessarily going to affect, and then they can move some. But I do think from our standpoint it's a trend line, because we also have to establish new relationships with all of these new players and build those, and that's how we got a lot of our information and assumptions, is by having those kind of relationships with the general managers, so we're aware of the trend lines. But I agree with you, we don't know yet, so that's just something we do have to watch.
So no, that's the answer.
Any other questions at this time?
No, not at this time, thank you.
Councilmember Dornbecker?
Well, I have one that probably is, it's very simple, because I don't understand, although I know that you're trying to take everything into consideration, but can you explain to me about the projections associated with the very modest revenue that will be generated from the 7 rooms at the Washington Street Inn? Where's that?
That's the old Bordeaux house.
Ah.
And right now that is in a holding pattern, and it's being used. It's been acquired, and it's being used as a off-site location for visitors and guests for the French Laundry. So they'll put visiting chefs and things in there. So it's not generating a market revenue on that terms. They're keeping it in operation to maintain their use permit, and the long-range planning is very favorable, which they would anticipate doing something different with it in a redevelopment. But right now, that's why I say that's in a holding pattern, and it's not even generating the level of TOT that it previously had. And when you still look at all of those factors together, right now we're trending ahead of last year's TOT marks, including, and that did include 30-some rooms in the Vintage Estate were offline when they renovated in the spring. So I think it's a reasonably prudent, conservative number. As you know, you cautiously chided me several years ago about being too conservative and not putting the money into the budget to allocate. So I'm thinking this is reasonable. I'm also thinking, if anything, we might be a little low on property tax, but we want to get a really good number, because we should be seeing some additional property sales, and we should really book the Bardesano adequately. So we're watching that. We just don't have that number yet. And again, for us, that could be the swing of $30,000. So in the grand scheme of things, it's important, because that could fund library hours or something. But right now, it's not going to fundamentally shift the core structure of the budget that you've asked us to put together.
And have we heard any information about the new owners of the Bardesano, if they are planning to complete a really luxurious, one-up kind of cottage place that they were talking about doing?
We've had conversations and continue to have conversations, and until those conversations are manifested into an application, that's all they are. So they're aware, they've met with us in planning staff. I think it's their intent, but we thought it was their intent under the prior ownership, and it didn't happen. But I do think they're looking to maximize their investment, and one of the ways to do that, obviously, is to fully develop the remainder. As you may know, that's slightly unique because while the council's previously shared its support, there's the property is actually privately owned and not part of the hotel, so hotel use has to be transferred onto that parcel. So we'll see where they are when they come back with that.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I'm not going to pile on, but I'm going to pile on. And that is to say that, you're projecting, even with your budget adjustment, which will come in the next part of this dialogue, that we're going to be down, I'll only call it $80,000 year over year, because you're going to adjust it to TOT of 6.5 versus last year 6.6. So I just caution us, this is the time to set parameters and goals. I agree with the council and the commentary that's gone on. The one thing that would conclude is if we were to reevaluate based on a more conservative TOT estimate, is that your reserve is going to drop with it because it's based on TOT. So just remember, these all have, cause and effect. We know there's properties coming online up Valley. We know we've got new owners coming online in April, according to the Yountville Sun. And your conversations, there will be change. Let's be prepared. Let's not be surprised.
And I would say that's why they're not seeing a number that's matching the current year or the last year. It's still lower than both of those.
I agree. I'm just having you hear that I think you've heard at least three of the council, and the mayor hasn't spoken yet, saying that we need to really be conservative here. We've been really lucky. We've taken advantage of it. We should be grateful. We've put reserve aside. Let's be conservative. Let's play by the by the way we know that we can be smart about it, and it'll help us manage their expenditure budget as well.
Is that it?
For revenue.
For now. I'm going to hold comments till we get further into the presentation, so let's move ahead to the next phase.
The next phase is we're going to talk to you about a few areas where we know we're going to have expenditure increases. These primarily are in some of our areas where we contract for service delivery. The first is the council's favorite, which is an increase in the animal shelter cost. We're looking at that going to about $23,000. I will also caution that there is a potential ballot measure that could change that cost, and that would potentially change it in a higher cost number for us, but we'll wait and see. I continue to try to find alternatives for us to get out of the animal shelter business. I cannot find a cost-effective one. We don't have a vehicle to do it here.
Didn't Calistoga pull out of this?
They contract. They have two things. Yes, they have pulled out, as has St. Helena.
St. Helena has a cage in the police department.
Right, and they
in case the
partner,
dog comes
they
in.
transport, they take their police officers, will transport the animals over to Petaluma Humane Society. That is how Calistoga is doing it. We don't have our own.
Right, okay.
And the sheriff's department is in tied relationship with the county structure. So we've looked at that model. That model does not work for us. That's a perfect segue, though, thank you, to the various other things. We will have modest increases in both the fire and sheriff's contract. We also have a modest increase in the cost of the housing authority contract with the city of Napa. Some fairly good news, our PERS rates are actually starting to stabilize a little bit. In part, that's because we've taken some few things to be a little more structured with that. What I probably want to draw your attention to is the lower end of the chart, which you can see that we're slowly shifting a number of new employees and new hires away from the Tier 1. So the trend line on both of those, although I will caution that we'll wait and see with the next review on we're kind of in an unstable situation. Again, we're using a trend line for health, employee and retiree health insurance rates. COLA is actually now known at 3%, so we know where we're headed with our employee bargaining unit salary cost increases. I have some good news. The risk management program cost is going to be only up about $10,000, not the $20,000 that we came back last week. And then we'll continue to maintain the appropriation for leave buyout provision. So those are just some of the cost factors. We're building the budget on the fact that we're going to maintain our core level of service at the existing level. There will be no new programs unless they're coming with an identified funding source. We continue as a staff to work on cost recovery and staying within our targets. The budget will be balanced with expenditures kept within our available revenue. We will maintain a budget contingency. We'll maintain the legal contingency. We will maintain our OPEB rate at 14%. I'll footnote that we're also this year we will do a new OPEB actuarial study, and that may have a change. That may give us a higher number. It may give us a lower number when we factor it in, but that adjustment will be done. I also want to point out that the OPEB irrevocable trust is now up to $1.6 million. So while that's not shared on our books as a reserve, it offsets from an actuarial standpoint the liability. And as you remember, I think in your last presentation, we're making very good progress and in probably one of the top 25% of the public agencies in terms of where we're at. And our current process has us still making a sizable deposit into the irrevocable trust every year while maintaining a pay-as-you-go. And in fact, we may anticipate that we maybe get to a point where we're able to pay the current operating costs for the program out of that irrevocable trust at a certain point. Too early to say that, but that's probably a goal within the next 2 or 3 years. No new staff positions. We do, as you know, utilize a lot of part-time help, especially in our park and recreation area. We will be evaluating. It will not be a major impact for this year, but the new minimum wage salary structure will have some impact on especially some of the entry-level salaries for the part-time parks and rec. So I don't think you'll see a big impact in this year's budget at all, but as we build our programs together next year, you could see that in a slight ripple effect, especially as it relates to the challenging market for entry-level employees that we face in Napa County. As you know, we entered this year with no rate increases in January for either water or wastewater. We are in the process of completing, and we'll be bringing back to the council and working with the community and an ad hoc committee on what our new 5-year rate study will be. And the good news is the early projections do not indicate it will be anything like the last 5 years or what Napa Sanitation District has just gone through with their 63%. But I do want to remind the community and council that we already had to deal with kind of getting our house in order, and to your credit, you've done that. The other important thing that is very beneficial is that unlike some public agencies in California that have seen water revenue decrease because of the drought, because people reduced, remember, we changed the fundamental premise of our rate so that we base most of our fixed costs on access to service. So that's the meter. That's the fact that you could draw water from our system. So our fixed cost, our maintenance, all of those things are covered for by that. Our consumption charge is actually just the direct purchase of water from the state. So we haven't had a negative impact on our rates. So that's a very positive thing. But some of our neighboring jurisdictions do not have a rate. But we will also have to be looking at a little bit, as you know, we have tiered rates in terms of usage. Under the current San Juan ruling, we're going to have to look at that, and it's probably going to have to be a flat rate with penalty assessments. That could be very similar, but we'll get into that. But that's just something to look at down the road. Maintain our drought reserve fund balance, which is just over $2 million. Continue to fully fund the fare box so that the trolley service is free. Maintain funding to support the current 4.5 hours
4.
And we're up for about 43,000 on that. Maintain our current approach for street projects, which, as you know, we're one of the few communities using general fund revenue above our gas tax to actually improve our roads and streets. You'll hear a little bit more later in the CIP, but my challenge is I got to try to find the float and the financial capacity to help us get Yountville Crossroad done this year. But that's going to be a priority that we'll be talking about. And then one of the other elements coming up in this fiscal year, the new fiscal year, will be the council embarking on a new 5-year strategic plan that will reflect the council's vision and direction and replace the current 2011-2016 plan. I'm not going to cover the CIP details because the Public Works Director is going to give you a much more detailed, thrilling 4-hour presentation on the CIP.
With slides. Sorry.
So now I'll turn it back over to Finance Director Ojeda to talk a little bit about the minor mid-year budget adjustments that we're proposing.
Great, thank you. So we'll cover proposed budget adjustments for this fiscal year, and then we'll also talk about the calendar for May for the upcoming budget workshops, and then we'll hear about the CIP from our Public Works Director. So as you may recall, in December, the Town Council approved a resolution for 15-16 budget adjustments. So because of that, there's very little to adjust at this present time, but we don't want to be remiss of some of the minor items that we should adjust just to end the year well, and so I have a few items to review with you on that note. These changes are proposed based on looking at revenues and expenditures through February, which is 66% of the fiscal year, but we know that our fiscal year is not running monthly, but it's cyclical depending upon what goes on in the community. And so with that, the summary of our adjustments is as follows. In the report you've got a table for the General Fund 01. The net increase to that is $73,000. As you can see, we're rolling back sales tax and we're increasing TOT. As previously mentioned, French Laundry was closed. TOT is trending higher. Charges for services are also projected to exceed the adopted revenue estimates due to higher activity in planning and plan check and wayfinding fees. So these are sort of one-time revenues that have just been up this year, and so we want to adjust for that. Miscellaneous revenue increases are attributed to one-time revenue streams such as refunds that we receive from PARSAC, our liability and workers' compensation insurance provider, and reimbursements for legal fees incurred by the town. So these are things that are not cyclical, they're not routine, and they just sometimes come up depending upon what's going on in town. And then part of the refund was due to a payroll audit that PARSAC completed, and it was an overpayment for prior years, so we received a refund. State Gas Tax Fund, Fund 20, we're proposing a reduction of $18,791. We're adjusting the budget down. We will not exceed the budget, and this is to be in line with the latest highway user tax projected revenues report that we received, so that it's consistent with what the state is telling us. Transfers in and transfers out summary. Consistent with budgeting practices, the Town Council has adopted a series of transfers in and transfers out. This enables municipal business operations. There's 2 interfund transfers that are recommended to properly support operations for the remainder of the year. In fiscal year 14-15, there was a mispayment to Fund 53 for $21,538. In the adopted fiscal year 15-16, the payment of $21,538 due to Fund 53 was not budgeted. So for those 2 reasons, total payments to Fund 53 will be $43,080. And then during this evening's meeting, under the consent, you adopted Resolution 16331, which proposed a payment from Fund 60 to Fund 50 in the amount of $93,875 to pay off debt for the municipal well project. The payoff is largely offset by the refund from the State of California administrative fees and a small amount for interest on what is left, so that there's no debt, which is always good in my book anyway. And then finally, for wastewater treatment capital recovery fund 63, a review of the budget and actuals tells us that we actually need to adjust the budget to $93,300 for this fiscal year just to be in line with the revenues that are actually trending in those funds. So as you can see, because of the good work that was done through December and the adjustments you made at that time, the adjustments proposed to you at this time are really nominal but necessary. And we would appreciate your adoption of that resolution as recommended. And we will attach the proposed adjustments to the resolution so that it follows the record.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And with that, I also just want to propose the 2 dates for your budget workshops. We can start by recommending May 10th and May 24th, provided that you're available. We tried to review all the different meetings that you're all pulled into and tried to accommodate those and think of what might be the lightest day for everyone. They would both begin at 1:30.
What's the dates again? I'm sorry.
May 10th and May 24th.
10 and 24.
They will all begin at what time?
1:30.
So we have 4 meetings that week.
We'll have to talk about the 24th.
Yeah, 24th is going to be a challenge for.
If you
Okay.
think
We talk about it right now?
So we have,
another,
so we shopped the calendar quite a bit. So the alternative could also be the 23rd and the 25th of May.
Okay, so let's just very quickly, May 10th, is that okay with the council?
Hold on.
May 10th?
Yes.
Yes.
Hold on. 1 second, I'm sorry.
I've heard, I think, 4 of the 5, you're okay with the 10th?
The 10th, yes,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
so 4 of us, not if there's any pressure.
I'm in LA.
Okay.
I'm not here.
The 24th is a conflict for me, the vice mayor has a conflict.
I have a conflict.
I
Both
also have a
Councilmember
conflict.
Dornbecker.
Well, I'll make up for it on the 24th then.
Well,
What's that?
Any time after the 10th is fine.
On that same week?
No, any time at the end of the month.
So the
is fine, is wide open for me.
May 23rd and May 25th are also good options for you that seem to look promising for you based on all the other stuff.
23rd, yes or no? council?
23rd, yes?
23rd,
I'm okay
yes.
on the 23rd.
Okay,
Okay.
so can we go to the 23rd and the 24th?
Well,
Or
no,
do you
'cause
need
said-
one early in the month?
Probably a little better to have one early in the
I mean,
month.
not the 24th, yeah, the
right.
23rd and the 25th, that's what I meant.
that doesn't really give us, if we're
Okay.
going to
Right.
do
It
it.
could be
we
a no.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
just saying,
Okay,
We need
you're
to-
going the right direction. If we're going to do 2 back-to-back, they would need to be further back, but it doesn't really give
We need-
us
Okay.
a lot of
Yeah.
time to make the
Okay, so
adjustments.
Yeah.
the week
between-
of the 9th.
Is Monday not good?
Which,
Is
Monday?
Monday the 9th not good?
Oh, that's what I was going to propose.
No,
too.
Monday the 9th's no longer good.
Sorry. Very good.
Ah.
Then it should happen, because I'm not available the rest of the week.
Well, or
We
do we
could
have
do-
both later in May?
What about the 11th of May?
He's not available
I'm
any
Oh,
of
available.
that
I
week.
apologize.
I'm sorry.
Okay, you're out.
So-
The week of
But
the
he's
16th
available
is,
the 9th.
Yes.
Can you
He
rearrange it?
said it's
The
not.
9th is not
The 9th
an
was
option.
just booked for
Yeah.
the Tourism Improvement District's workshop.
So can I just, I mean, I know it's a nightmare to be here for 15 hours, but we're used to it. So could we do the 17th before the town
Well,
council
speak
meeting?
for yourself.
Sorry.
Well, I'm not
I'll
used
bring
to
I,
15
that's
hours.
that's
used to
entirely,
it.
so we skipped the week of the 16th because it looked kind of heavy, but really it's council's decision.
So-
That's the
It looks
24th.
heavy already?
What
Well, no, I
about-
mean, the week looks heavy, the week for
What about
meetings.
Monday, the 16th, so that it's not on a council day?
You've got Upper Valley Waste Management meeting at 1:30.
I can talk fast. I run the meetings.
It's up to you.
Well, what if you want, would you be available to do a morning workshop on
You guys
Monday?
cleared the room.
Yeah, on the
Let's do Monday
16th.
morning, the 16th, 9?
Yeah, I'd prefer that.
8:30 to-
Morning on the 16th?
Yeah, Monday, the 16th.
I'll make it work. I mean, it's a Monday. That's
Well, I'm just saying,
Wow.
we can't really pull
The 10th
Upper
is
Valley.
off.
Correct.
10th is off.
I'll bring
So-
breakfast sausage for you, Vice Mayor.
Does it matter what time we start? Is
Oh.
8:30
I
any different
heard
than
that,
9?
Jeff.
Are we talking about May 16th?
9 o'clock.
Let's try to have less than 5 conversations at once.
9 o'clock on Monday, the 16th? That's what I got.
Does 9 o'clock work? Do we need more time than that to get out by noon? Or what are we trying to do? 9 to noon? Is that what we're talking
Well,
about?
if your indulgence on the morning, I'd probably like to go till 1 if possible, because the other thing is, if we're able to get through, our normal sequencing, we're going to try to expedite these a little bit because of it being a more maintenance. So we're going to go over the core operating
Okay,
departments.
so let's say 9 to...
We could get through
9 to
most
1,
of the budget.
Okay, 9 to 1 on May 16th. Does that work for the council and staff? Okay. So 9 to 1, May 16. And then May 24th does not work. So we were talking about the 23rd.
You were looking at the 23rd.
Yes. Does the 23rd work for everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
And do we want to stick with a morning, or should we, in consideration of the public also, if somebody can't make mornings at all, should we do one morning and one afternoon?
You can do that.
Yeah.
So how about on the 23rd, we start, how early do we need to start to be finished by a reasonable hour?
Traditionally, you've started at 1:30.
Till 5? Okay, so let's say May 23rd, 1:30 to 5.
I have library duty. How about 4:30? Well, we'll see
Well,
what happens.
we're gonna
I have to
reserve
leave
5
early.
and plan on getting out before that. Okay, so May 16, May 23rd,
Okay.
Start time on the 16th again?
9 to 1.
9, okay, thank you.
The 23rd,
We'll
1:30
send
to
you
5.
reminder notices.
Okay.
Bring us lunch.
Okay, so we got that part taken care of. You already mentioned the comment I was going to make about including these adjustments in the resolution. Are there other questions about this second phase of the adjustments? Councilmember Mueller?
About what we just went over?
Yeah, the second half of the presentation.
Starting with revenue or expenses. I hate to keep talking about the animal shelter every time, but I just think, I forgot to go and look it up, but I actually went out and got the number of animals that Yountville is paying for, and it's, like $1,000 or $2,000 a dog. I don't know. Can't we negotiate something like the library does? They don't charge it. They don't give us funds based on the number of people. It's like the number of books.
The calculation is based on the population for potential service. So right now,
Well, if the
we've had
library
those-
isn't.
We
I'm
can't
just
argue
telling
the
you where the
formula.
current structure is. If you would like to have a council subcommittee,
No.
I'm just saying, we've gone up and
The
down.
county
on
is
that.
not going to make a separate formula for Yountville because we're getting overcharged based on use. I don't think
And
there's any chance of that happening.
The other concern that I would have is, we don't, the number of registered dogs and cats, so if you did it on registered animals, we may actually pay a higher percentage because most of our residents are probably more forthright about registering. But that would be the only other metric to do it, would be on registered pets. So then you create a
But when they give you
potential.
the animal numbers, it's not, there's only a few of them that are dogs or cats. They count
They count everything. But the only
rodents
registered, right,
and,
the only registered animals.
foxes running through town. And
Like I say, I understand your frustration,
All
but for
right.
20-some thousand, I haven't come up with something that's more cost-effective.
All right, then next I'll kind of go to the library. And I don't really have a question, I'm going to make a comment. We're the only library that is paying for hours, and we're paying 40+ thousand for that. My original request that the council pay for those was the hope, 5 years ago, that this CAM model was going to take care of that, and this was going to be a temporary thing. And, my comment is I'm not very satisfied that we're the only one has to pay for it. Calistoga is not in the CAM model. They have a totally different contract. St. Helena has a public library. They're not in the system. I mean, with this new software, they can't even borrow anymore because they're not compatible because the county changed their software. The Napa, Maine is not in the system, so only Yountville and American Canyon are subject to the CAM, and it's just not appropriate that we still have to be paying for this, and we have by far the fewest hours. I mean,
So, I don't mean to cut you off, I'll let you keep going, but to me, what it seems like we're talking about is adjustments to 15-16. Am I correct about that? We're not setting 16-17 budget.
No, this is what we're using to build the 16-17.
I understand you're looking to build it, but if we make a comment now, it just seems like we shouldn't be drilling down into that narrow a
Actually,
detail.
if you want to do something different, in other words, for example.
Okay, well
if
then,
you're- if you're
okay, that's fine, then go ahead and continue.
well, my point here is that I'm still going to support that we keep the $45,000 in the budget. But I don't want this thing to be just, rote, that every time Yountville is just going to keep, always paying for these hours. I would like to send that message loud and clear that this was something that we put in as a temporary measure just to, when we had the volunteer program to kind of get Thursdays open. We were only open.
And I know, I'll just add this real quickly before Steve. I've had that very specific conversation with Scott Owens, and he is aware of how we got to where we are and the fact that we're not satisfied that it's just ongoing open-ended. So he has already been engaging Dennis Kreimeier and the commission about the model and our desire to have it change. Whether it'll be effective or not remains to be seen. There's been very much reluctance for the county to do that.
And it may, if we want to continue to re-engage, it may be time to look at getting an ad hoc committee and doing more. What we have, because we're operating under a premise right now, which is the county, when they implemented their new model, says your base allocation is 17 and a half hours. We negotiated instead of them paying rent for the space, we got 2 hours. So we've got the extended hours. And
how long is that term set for? The free rent for 2 hours?
I don't want to give you, it's a long number because we tied it to their lease agreement. So it's a long term because we wanted to maximize. The council has always wanted to maximize the amount of hours. You all have a shared goal of increasing hours, but in a reasonable way. Right now, you are correct. We're one of the only agencies that is putting this level of funding. We've also worked really hard to develop the extended hours model. Right now, the county offered us the agreement. There's a funding formula with it that we're using, and we're buying those 4 hours. We could increase more. We could decrease it. So I'm just saying,
what I'm hearing,
we need to be a participant.
The issue is not how much we're putting in. The issue is how little the county is supporting the hours for Yountville.
I'm just
That's
saying
the issue,
how you.
correct?
That's your
issue.
political issue. That's your concern. Yes. If we want to sit down and look at that more, then I would say let's bring back the ad hoc and start having stronger support for the library commission and staff and the council to go. We want a model that's different and fairer. That's how we're going to change the base allocation.
They spent $250,000 on that model.
Well, it sounds like they are reevaluating that model at this time, from what
Well,
Scott was just saying.
I will also share.
I read the
think
minutes, it
I
wasn't in
share
there.
some of both the council's concern. The model was only been applied once, and it was supposed to go up and down based on these inputs, and it doesn't seem to have. So staff's frustrated with the model, but we're not the operator.
So,
And,
would a letter from you or a letter from the council be the proper process in order to emphasize our frustration with the lack of movement on that model?
I think it would have more influence coming from the council.
Okay, so I'll work with you to draft a letter, and we'll represent the council's
And I would also
position.
say we want a seat at the table to discuss any model change.
Okay. Is that
Good.
satisfactory to the council?
Yeah.
Good.
But the budget will be continued, the proposed budget before you will maintain
Until we
the support.
affect change. Okay.
And just one comment, tell them that this money that we're putting in is a temporary stopgap.
Right. Other questions
That
about?
may not have, I'm just saying, in all due candor, that may not mean anything to them.
That's fine.
I'll do something.
We'll put all of our talking points in that letter. Councilmember Durham, did you have thoughts on this second part of the presentation?
No, sir.
Councilmember Dornbecker?
I did have a question about the debt servicing on account 53. That was a catch-up payment for fiscal year 2014, 2015. Was that an oversight on our part, or how did that?
It was budgeted in one line item, but not budgeted in another, and it just didn't occur. We had some staff turnover, so I just think it was a miss. But because we tend to audit things fairly regularly, we caught it, and we want to make sure we stay on top of the payments.
Good.
So
Okay,
it's just
thanks.
one time.
Okay.
This year, you will, Councilmember Dornbecker made me realize, we will start seeing interest payments for the state revolving fund will be a factor in the wastewater enterprise. It has a very low-cost interest, but you will see that this year for the first time.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
And I do want to acknowledge, just because it is, I think, significant, an earlier consent calendar action, you retired the municipal well debt dating back to 2006, so congratulations.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. So my only question is on the $100,000 budget adjustment you're asking us to approve tonight to TOT from 6.4 million to 6.5. I mean, that's your assumption that you're going to get there? So you're asking us to approve something that may or may not occur?
No,
You're
that's
very
actually-
confident we're going to get there?
Well, the trend line is looking really good.
Well, let me tell
So-
you what we're looking at there. We put the original, this is looking at the raw number
It would
that's
just go to
occurred
unallocated
above.
if we didn't make this budget adjustment. It would go to unallocated and we could deal with it later.
You could.
And you still will, because we will probably end the year with an unassigned fund balance.
So when we looked at this, we looked at what was February now and what was February last year. Now, last year you ended with almost almost 6.6. So to go to 6.5 is a pretty good estimate, given
Okay.
what's going on.
as long-
But I mean, ultimately, it's before you, and it's your choice. If you feel like it can come allocated at the end of the year, it's up to you too. It's based
Right.
on, 66% of the budget, where we were last year this time, same numbers.
And to be
this
fair,
will-
we have given the staff direction to not leave us with $2 million in unallocated that we feel like we should have had the ability to allocate throughout the year.
But if we removed that $100,000, it makes your balance 26,768 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, it's,
The opposite direction. Doesn't matter. I'm comfortable with it as it's presented. I just was curious if you really think you're going to get there, and it sounds like you are. Okay.
Well, the real numbers got us there in the past while budgeting low, and we're not
What we're also
we're not
trying-
budgeting to that new high real number.
We aren't, and that's why we use the three-year trend. So we're never, when there's a high number that's coming off, we're balanced. So I think what we're trying to do is make sure the year-end numbers reflect what's actual, and that's the current, because we collect TOT monthly. So we've been up every month over last year.
And we did absorb, as you noted, the Vintage Inn having several of the rooms offline for an extended period of time already. So
The only thing we haven't fully absorbed is the extended lunch closure and 6-month delay of the French Laundry. That has had a real impact on sales tax revenue.
and Napa Style has been offline for several months as well.
We had an assumption and a number, but it reflected a shorter duration of their lunch service.
A different price point.
Well, also, they should have, their earlier estimate of time and what they told us and what the reality is are off by about 6 months.
Right.
But
Construction.
we do anticipate the lunch service resuming for this fiscal year, so I'm probably going to say, if I'm anything, we're probably low on the sales tax. If the French Laundry returns to its normal.
we're using a conservative variable factor to tell you what sales tax is, so that rollback is conservative. So reducing it is somewhat to our favor, more to your point about the TOT, right? So
as an aside, the fact that their temporary kitchen is for sale for 7 figures, we see that sales tax if that is sold in Yountville.
It should be, because it's coming from an operation in Yountville.
Just put a little Post-it note on that one.
Good.
I thought most people wanted it for free and were willing to pay to haul it away.
Well,
I'll do that.
Who knows? Any other questions, Councilmember Durham?
Just real quick to comment on nobody has commented on the fact that the Railway Inn was down for a while, completely closed, remodeling. Also, if all these hotels are going to be dumping all this money in, they're going to be expecting something in return, and that's a much higher ADR, which is going to give us a higher RevPAR. And indeed, if Four Seasons is opening in Calistoga, which they are, Napa's breaking ground for 351 units, the Archer Hotel will open next year. That collectively is going to make the whole county rise through Visit Napa with the money that's being spent on tourism. So I might be the one person who doesn't think we need to be as conservative as we are.
Based on what you're saying also, Councilmember Durham, if there's going to be an impact it's not going to be in this year. It would be 1 year out. The real question that's yet to be determined is the current studies show that the Napa Valley is under-lodged, meaning that there's capacity. So the theory could be that our niche market, because we're a unique niche market, will rise in a few of those. We don't know. I mean, I didn't premise the rise that we've had in the way that we have, but that's something I say. We trend, you guys get a monthly report. You know that we're looking at which one's up. And I would say Councilmember Durham's correct. We're seeing, whatever happens with the Washington Street lodging property is probably going to be at a significantly higher revenue stream than what it was currently or presently operating. Railway Inn seems to be back on its normal. The Vintage and Bellagio, the trend lines that I would expect is some increased marketing and effort on the part of the property, and then probably some repositioning of the lodging going up. And then encourage the Hotel Yountville and Bardessono to maintain their rate structure. That would be and that's the other, I will be very honest with you. When you come in with a destination annual occupancy rate of 80% and an average room rate, we hit an average room rate of 504 for the year last year. There's not a lot of up because we're talking about Tuesday and Wednesday and creating activity. I just want to be real clear. We know that at a staff level.
So I don't think there are any more questions from council. So is there direction? You're asking for us to adopt the adjustments as presented, and I think the one change we need to note is the resolution will be adjusted to include the adjustments in text in the resolution.
We'll make a reference and attach it as an exhibit.
So it'll accompany the resolution, and it'll have what you see in your report, it will be attached so that it's with it.
Typically, what I seem to remember, we have always included the actual line items in the resolution itself. I worry about attaching things to resolutions.
Don't, in the sense, what I really need you to do is we'll add one sentence to the resolution that says the adjustments that are made shall be as reflected on Exhibit A, and Exhibit A will be attached. That way you have a full record of everything.
Town attorney is totally comfortable with that?
Yeah, and this discussion essentially amounts to a minute order even requiring that amendment in the resolution. So you've got plenty of legislative record that your intention is that the resolution include the attachment, and resolutions can include information and attachments by reference.
It already does even state that is including the attachment. I was just looking for something even more explicit.
Yeah, the exact attachment in this dialogue clarifies, I think, that concern.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 163332, approving the budget adjustments for fiscal year 2015-16.
I'll second.
We don't need to read anything. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. That passes. Thank you. We are well on our way to putting together 16-17 in an accurate way.
How are we going to spend that money, Joe?
Exactly. Part 2 of this conversation. Item B, review and discussion of our 5-year capital improvement program.
You had 720 slides, so.
Start with number 700.
This evening, we have for your review and discussion the 5-year capital improvement program for fiscal years 2016-17 through 2021. Over the past 5 years, you have invested approximately $18.8 million on capital improvements, including $6.5 million in this current fiscal year, 15-16. Each year, projects are reviewed for priority and rearranged as necessary. The CIP, I think it's important to note that the CIP is a living document that is updated annually. As it is prepared and projects and priority needs are identified, they're incorporated into the program to maintain a comprehensive rolling 5-year plan. These include projects that are new and those that have been previously adopted in earlier plans, which are more defined as a project that is refined over time. There are also those projects and programs that are continuing to be developed with community input and town council priorities. So in the case of our parks programs, Parks and Rec Advisory Committee weighs in on many of the projects that you see, as you are well aware, that come before you in the course of the year. Staff has been working on projects that include street and utilities projects that are grouped into larger projects. It allows us to take advantage of economies of scale to get lower bids for the construction of the projects. The total proposed fiscal year 16-17 budget has approximately $2.65 million in available funding, which includes the following: $1.955 million on capital funds, Fund 50, just a little over $65,000, $67,000 in gas tax funds, $60,000 in joint treatment funds, $143,000 in wastewater collection capital funds, and $420,590 in water capital funds. Fiscal year 2016-17 operating budget will include the first year of the 5-year capital improvement program budget. Several projects will be in design or construction at the end of the fiscal year, so the balance available for fiscal year 15-16 is the best estimate of what is available at that time. So we'd like to get right into what we have for you this evening in terms of our presentation. What we put together tonight are those projects which are going to be proposed to be built in the 16-17 year. Also, any new projects or programs that have been added to the annual 5-year program. First up, first slide you see is the community center trash enclosure. So this has been on the list for a couple of years now. We think that this particular design is one that Parks and Rec Director has indicated she would prefer. It comes from behind the Opera Center in Napa, so we're hoping that we'll be able to get some of the design elements and some of the more critical parts of this design from the Napa County or City of Napa design, and save a little bit of money when we go to design. It's proposed to be around $85,000. Second slide. Town Council Chamber improvements. This is a 2-year program. First year, $5,000 for planning. It's going to include updating the dais, modernization and for technology improvements. It will include features to allow for a more modern IT platform and include modernization to the area where town staff sets up equipment for presentation, which includes, but not limited to, computer connection equipment to make multimedia presentations run with more ease and increase communications efforts. That, and then an additional $35,000 planned for 17-18.
Joe, does that money include a logo that's we've been waiting for since we've remodeled this building?
I'm sure we can.
The 5,500 now?
I'm sure we can include a logo for that. But I'll make sure we get that onto the program. There should be one before that, Sandra. Okay.
Center.
Actually, there is one before that. The Town Hall HVAC. HVAC has been costing us a little bit of money to maintain here in Town Hall. In the last couple of years, we've put close to $5,000 in equipment into the heating and AC system. The HVAC contractor tells us it'd probably be cheaper to put in a new heater, so that's what we're going to do with CF0016. Refinish the community center floor. This is proposed for year 5. We have just did a minor resurfacing of the floor as a part of the upgrade for the community center and community hall. The flooring contractor recommends that we do that treatment every 5 years. The estimate is $50,000. We would put that into the replacement program so that we could fund that in year 5. Next slide. Installed generator at community center, community hall. Again, this is a year 5 program. In year 4 of this program, we would fund the design and engineering for the installation in year 5. That's $65,000 total, $15,000 in 1920 and $50,000 in 2021. So for those of you who have been around long enough to remember, in years past when it flooded here in town, we would open up the community hall as a shelter. We haven't had to do that for the past couple of years, but in anticipation that we will someday need to use that again for emergency purposes. We have a portable generator now. That does not power the community center. It does, however, power the community hall. proposed project would run both community center and community hall and be a permanent installation that would run off natural gas, similar to what we have installed here at Town Hall. Next slide. There's the Town Hall HVAC. We've talked about that. Next slide. GIS mapping, Town Hall trash enclosure. So this is a year 5. This is a year 5 improvement, and it's similar to what we have proposed for community center, community hall. We would have to have some kind of an agreement with the school district because part of this is their property as well. So we definitely need something there. As you can see on the left-hand side, it's doesn't meet the most current standard for trash storage, and it definitely is in need of an upgrade. So that would be for year 5. Next slide, please.
Can we get rid of all those toters and just all those toters that are always lining the street out here when this goes in? Are those our toters or are they the school toters?
Those are not our toters.
No, the toters right now are a combination of the school and ours, so depending on the dumpsters and the service level, we could get rid of the toters. The toters on the opposite side are from the Bardesano.
So the effort would be to consolidate the trash,
Wait till we get to them.
put in a covered trash enclosure, which is now required by code, tie it into a storm sewer so that we meet all the current code and regulation and get the truck to be able to pull in without damaging or destroying the fence and enclosure. So that's the goal.
Sandra knows all about the radiuses. And
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get through this section, then we'll ask questions.
GIS mapping improvements. This is a continuation of the program that we have been embarked on for the past few years. With this current year coming up, we look to improve the Myville app, increase our mapping capabilities. As we start to use this map more, we found out that we either don't have some connections that we didn't capture, or the connections that we did capture aren't entirely accurate. So we're continuing to refine our map. In addition, the planning and Parks and Rec functions will come online, and they'll be able to use some of those mapping functions as well. So that's the plan for the upcoming year for GIS. North Yountville parking improvements. So this is a proposed project, and it definitely is one that is up for a longer discussion, either this evening or at some point in the next month as we develop our budget. What the town manager and public works staff have been discussing is an improvement to the North Yountville parking area, including putting in some retaining wall. It would be some angled parking, some parallel parking, but a definite increase in overall parking, with the purpose being to be able to somehow rent these slots or sell these slots to a North Yountville business that could then use them for that area for employee parking. We are also talking about undergrounding the area at the same time, so it's a much longer term process and project. This is a project that has not been discussed much, but we wanted to bring it up this evening for a bit of discussion, the community Wi-Fi hotspot. As you know, the town manager has discussed this on several occasions. We had a presentation from Entersphere a couple of months ago. We did receive some feedback. With that feedback, we would come back and offer a couple of locations. The parks at either end of town would be great locations, and possibly around the community center, community hall area. However, that would be up to the council for the council to decide. The program is tentatively budgeted for $60,000 based on discussions with Entersphere.
Right, but I would point out that's scheduled for year 2021.
Right, these
not
are
the
all,
current.
this is at least year 5. Next slide. This one is in the same in the same discussion arena, year 5, 2021. Community security cameras, again, we had this discussion at the same time we had the Wi-Fi discussion. We offered a couple of different looks at the camera. As you can see from the farthest view on the left, the cameras are getting to be so sophisticated that most of us wouldn't be able to even detect that it was a camera. They can do an awful lot of things with that little device besides use it as a camera. A particular interest to us, and what makes it so attractive is that it has an SD chip or some other recording device that doesn't require a direct video feed. We don't have access to that system. The only time that we would access it is if there was a need for some security reason. Then you could take the chip out, download that information. If nobody touches the chip, it typically re-records over itself in a predetermined period, usually every 72 hours. Next slide. Community Hall fire and smoke detection system. We did upgrade the community centers of fire and smoke detection system. However, the community hall was outside of the budget that the Parks and Rec director had to do this. So we were proposing to do this in the current year, 2016-17, and that would be $40,000. Washington Street drainage at Padroni.
Before you go on, Joe, you've gone through two sections. I want to give the council a chance to ask any questions on your civic facilities or community projects. Questions in the first two sections? Councilmember Dornbecker?
I do, because I have several other projects in here that I'm looking at, and there's been no mention of. For example, the workout center at the community center, and I don't know, what am I saying? What do I have that I'm not?
You should be looking at the packet that's the current year and anything that was new. So there were several packets. There were two packets in your
The
agenda
Public Works
packet.
Director hasn't finished all of the sections, so there's a section, the PK section, have you completed that?
I have completed CF and we've completed CP.
But let's make sure we're all looking at the same attachment. I'm looking at the green icon attachment, the first attachment after the legislative text. Is that what everyone is looking at?
I have the Excel file open.
Oh, okay. I was looking at the actual descriptions of those projects, and there were others in there, like the workout center and other things.
Right. So as I said at the beginning of the discussion, what we're presenting tonight are items that we haven't discussed previously. So it's or things that are coming up for this year. So the workout center has been. That's a PK, I believe.
It's in PK. I think if you, just so I'll address the workout center, it's a very preliminary discussion point. The first thing is we know there's been community interest. We don't know if it's viable. It's also going to be something that the council will need to take the input from the Parks Master Plan before we move it. But you'll see it introduced so that the public sees that it is something we're evaluating, but it's not introduced to be funded this year because we don't know anything about what it might look like or what it would take. But we're trying to potentially put a project that if the council would want to do something, we are recommending when you get to the narrative section on there that we wait until the completion of the Parks Master Study, Master Plan, so that we know what the community's priority is on things, because there may be, there's things like outdoor pickleball and a whole lot of things that, but we just wanted to put this one in the 5-year horizon. It's not funded. That's the other thing.
Okay.
And I believe we have talked about the fitness room at the community hall. We have not. It is, Councilmember Dornbecker is correct. It is CF006. So sorry.
It's been discussed. There was where you are familiar, Joe, the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission has heard from people that would like something, and that's why we're encouraging them to participate in the Parks Master Plan study.
Question I have about CF16, Town Hall HVAC. Why was that not already included in the renovation of Town Hall? That was an item that had been pulled for budget reasons?
The only thing I could say, Mayor, at that point, when we did this, that it was, this was a remodel, and at that point in time, I think it was determined that it didn't need to be replacing, and we trusted the folks, and now it's just not been sufficient. So we're reaching the point where we're spending too much good money, and we might as well replace the unit. But that's the best determination that I can come up with from...
The town manager is entirely accurate, and even our own staff kept thinking, well, this part will fix it. And then once it got
the fact that we insulated the building was supposed to be the fix, and it's not.
I think this is more related to the HVAC, the heater unit itself. We replaced several major components of that in the last year. Each of them we hoped would fix the heater, and it just hasn't. So our heating and air conditioning contractor has recommended that we replace it rather than continuing to replace parts and get a more efficient heater. And so that's what we have suggested that we do.
Okay. Vice Mayor, question?
Yes, so CF0005, is it really an $85,000 trash enclosure?
That's what we anticipate it's going to cost with engineering and construction. We hope it comes in less, but that's the same comment that we had from Parks and Rec Advisory
Well, it can
Committee.
come in less by not designing it as exotically as the picture.
And then my second or follow-on to that is if you're going to budget $85,000 in 16-17, and then you're going to have the same type of enclosure out in 2021, you should probably inflate it.
Well, we're thinking that we're going to save on engineering costs,
Okay, that's your prerogative.
and I'm hoping it
My
comes
comment.
in cheaper than that.
My other comment is on CP 0010 North Yountville parking improvements.
Yes.
I know we've pushed it out till the very end, so the hockey stick grows as we look out into the future. I think parking is one of those highly sensitive, neighborhood-driven areas, and this is one that we've been talking about.
Actually, the neighbors, when we met with all of them, if you recall the neighborhood group, they actually said they're not uncomfortable with employee parking developing on that site. Because if you remember, we had talked about adding some parking
Right, I
on the
understand
west
that.
side.
On the west side, yes, right. So I'm suggesting that maybe we not look at it 5 years from now, but potentially move it
Here's
forward.
here's what I'm sitting, if you look at it, the narrative also talks about the need for a public-private participation. So I'm in preliminary conversations, and there's 2 footnotes I want to look at. One, by putting a project in, there's also a couple preambles. Things may change on the priority based on regulatory compliance.
Right.
Failure of something that we need to replace, or funding materializes. So I'm going to put this in that category
Okay.
on both parking lots, that the opportunity to move forward on the South Washington parking lot and a North Washington parking lot all depend on private participation and funding.
And I'm just, my only comment, and it's not to be argumentative, but it's to say, wouldn't you rather pull that money forward and have it
I don't-
potentially available and then not spend it?
I don't have it yet. See, the problem I'm saying is I'm trying to bring the private participation.
No, what I'm hearing, we could budget it ourselves prior to the private partnership, is what the Vice Mayor is saying, I believe.
We don't have
could
to-
show the
yeah.
priority.
We can make it a priority if we really think that it's important
Well,
for the
you
community.
can accomplish the same thing by giving us direction to go out there. I'm just trying to say, if you put the money in, then the question looks at potentially the private sector is going, well, if you're going to pay for it, why do we need to pay for it?
I'm just trying to.
Oh, I hear you.
I'm
but just showing
evaluating
you-
what you guys have presented to us, and I
I'm
mean,
just showing you the logic for why it's presented as a unfunded project that needs their help to make it happen.
okay,
That's how I would phrase that.
that's fine. I just tomato.
I share the concern. I would move that money using that logic. I'd move it up to 2017-18 and give ourselves 1 year to find a partnership. If we put it off for 5 years, it looks like we are not being responsive to the needs of parking in the
We
north
can do that.
end.
That's why we're having the conversation. But I want you to know that we think there's interest.
I believe
And it's definitely going to probably be north of $50,000 if we're the ones who are doing the building rather than waiting for the subscription.
Part of what this process is for you guys to tell us what all the projects are, and we're just trying to help you re-rank and
We're hearing-
prioritize based on the timing.
You help
So
us
we,
with prioritization, so we'll move this one.
okay,
But
that's
I'm
my
also
thought. I
gonna
don't know if
say
the rest of the
we're also
council
moving it with the
agrees or
understanding
would support that,
We need to
but
go find the funding.
Then it's totally appropriate to say this is not yet funded, but
It continues to be, it's dependent on private participation.
I would also like to see a legitimate number there. Joe, if you just said it's not.
We are working on that, Mayor. We're
Here's
working
what
on
I
that
would-
right now.
it's less than the trash enclosure at this point.
We've actually, the number that's driving this is the retaining wall that is going to have to be a
Here's-
part of the construction.
Here's what I would say. We'll move that number, and that'll be design cost. so that we can have control over the design, and then we'll have a better construction cost.
We do have a good model because the Vine Trail is basically using the same type of retaining wall system that we're proposing to use. The engineering's similar, so we'll have some pretty tight numbers when we come to estimate this, so we can come back with a better number.
So is the council's interest in moving it to 17-18 or even up to 16-17, or not move it at all? Councilmember Durham?
I think sooner. I mean, things are changing quickly on that side of town. It seems to me if we're going to move it, we move it now and have this discussion now and make it a
To
priority.
16-17?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
For 16-17.
Okay. Councilmember Mueller?
Either this year, or I think I'm okay with next year. If I do appreciate the town manager's comment that if we plug it in this year, is it really going to preclude us from making an argument to a business to fund it? Or are they going to drill down this much? I mean, how does that
Let's
fall
put,
out?
if you're comfortable, we'll put $50,000 this year for the project with the understanding that that's design and analysis cost, and maybe some staff time working on financing mechanisms, and then we'll see who's interested. It could be multiple businesses, it could be one business.
Councilmember Dornbecker, your thoughts on this?
Well, I understand that the way you want to, get the public partnership done. But I do think that it's true. The development in the north end of town, as Councilmember Durham said, is taking place now. So I think we should at least, yes, have design and, a budget for design in 2016, 2017.
Okay, so I'm hearing that we move that 50,000 placeholder to 16-17.
We can do that, absolutely.
Yeah, Vice Mayor?
I know I'm probably going to be chided for this. The community Wi-Fi hotspot, I'm not, you want to put it out in 2021, okay, but the reality is people are using their satellite devices, their mobile chips. I'm not necessarily sure, because the second you put this thing in, everyone's going to complain it's too slow. And everyone who's on it's going to complain that it doesn't meet the needs 5 years from now, when we all know that, everyone's going to have their video phone in front of them. So I'm not necessarily sure I would support that at this juncture, because I think it's too preliminary and it's 5 years out, so what does it matter anyways? Other than you're putting a placeholder out there.
Yeah, I think we had to put this somewhere on the list to get a discussion started, so,
Then you can-
and that's, because of the way this software is built, that's the way that we had to fit this model in. I mean, it's basically an unfunded discussion item that we thought, we heard some feedback from the council that they were somewhat interested in both of these items, so we brought them back and wanted to get a little bit of feedback and some discussion on how interested you all are.
Well,
Councilmember Mueller?
in terms of the community center right now, if you just go in the community center, you log on, it's going to say, do you want to use the free library Wi-Fi? I mean, why would we even,
The range is very limited.
well, how far do you want it to go?
You don't even
Oh.
get full access in the plaza. so-
And as the town manager and Ennisphere presented a couple of months ago, there are some small revenue streams from at least the hotspot, the Wi-Fi. So it's not just a Wi-Fi, it would be some kind of an antenna system that would also be beneficial to the cell providers. A town manager could probably speak a little more eloquently.
Well, we had a
on it.
pretty
we had the
we had an
presentation.
extensive presentation. We don't need to go over the
All
presentation.
that I would
again.
basically say, if there's some interest, staff will continue to do research, and it may move forward. What I will tell you is the Tourism Improvement District has raised some interest, because we have market conditions. The city of Calistoga, St. Helena, and Napa are all moving forward with some type of public Wi-Fi in their community. So the question is, are you interested? At this point, it's not a funded situation, but we need a little bit of direction, because staff resources are going to go into learning more about what does it take to do something, and that's staff time, and we don't just spend staff time if it's not on a priority that the council has an interest in.
Well, I certainly would welcome the parent TID to invest in Yountville and provide public Wi-Fi to the visitors that come to Yountville and not just the south part of the valley.
Well,
That would be welcome.
Well, the TID has, the Tourism Improvement District does not have anything to do with the ones I mentioned. Those are all being funded by the individual communities.
Not to be a Luddite here, but this, this money, if it were spent on this type of access point, is going to be used not for the benefit entirely of the residents, but largely of the visitors. We're being charged as council members to support the residents, so.
I'm not sure that I agree with that based on where these would potentially be located. If it's just at a center of town location, I might agree with you, but by putting it at Yountville Community Park and Veterans Memorial Park, for example, a significant amount of use of that is local residents. So I think that's where our role would be, to figure out where can a combination of visitors and residents both benefit.
Fair enough.
I mean, the simplest thing that I would say is, right now, I don't have a proposal for you. I just want to know that it's something where we've done some homework, the technology is emerging. I share the Vice Mayor's concern, but I also know that we have lots of residents that are walking throughout town and they're using their cell phone and you're using your cell data, when if we had a public Wi-Fi, just like when you're here, because we also have the town sponsors free Wi-Fi at the community center and free Wi-Fi here at Town Hall.
Define free?
Free as in you pull up and it doesn't cost you.
They don't
anything.
charge you any data.
We're paying.
We are paying.
The town is providing
Okay.
and paying for the cost.
You could argue the visitors are paying for the
I get
local
it.
residents.
But I'm
not
just saying,
disputing
the
Based on the
question
80
really is the more simplistic.
80%.
Again, this project is not vetted. This is a topic. Would you like us to spend some time to better understand what it might look like next year? We can come back later with some ideas.
Yeah, is it the
But-
council's interest to move this item to a more immediate budget cycle? Councilmember Durham.
It is for me. I think in terms of, if we're going to sit here and talk about revenue and be so hell-bent on increasing TOT and the quality of guests that we get here, and we're concerned about the Four Seasons going up in these other hotels, the European traveler assumes you're going to have free town-wide Wi-Fi wherever you travel to. It's just a matter of another way of attracting people here. God forbid it not be 100% local serving, as every business in Yountville should be. But it's not going to be. It will be a service for the locals as well as a service for the tourists that we need to attract here in order to pay for every single item we're talking about on this budget. So I think we move it up.
Okay. Councilmember Mueller?
I think that I'm certainly willing to hear more about what it's really going to cost, how it's really going to work. So I agree that I'd like to have staff take a look at it. I'm a little nervous about these big giant poles going up.
There are, don't worry, do
We've
not
seen
connect
lots and
the
lots of
poles.
models.
There are
Okay, good. All
different-
right, good. I'm just telling you.
That's one element.
We're not going to
Like
worry
I
about
say.
the details right now. Councilmember Dornbecker, do you want to see this in the next fiscal year as
I
well?
do, and especially because the other communities with which we are going to be more in competition are going to have it. And I think that, I don't think that it would be good for Yountville to be known as the only one that doesn't have Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Vice Mayor?
I'm okay with it. I just don't know
What
how
I'm-
we're really going
All right,
to.
what
Let's
I'm-
move it up to
Right.
16,
What
17.
I want to
Say
do
leave
is,
it
I'm going to ask you to put a $10,000 placeholder, because I may need to take out and find a technical consultant that can help me do analysis in an RFP, because I don't know what I don't know, and this is an area where I don't know a lot, and we
Well,
don't have staff resources. But that way,
I think that you're underfunding that. To go from 60,000 to 10, if we find something that's reasonable and appropriate for this year, we're now having to make
we would come
tens of
back, but
thousands of
what I'm
dollar
really asking
adjustment.
for is, I don't have a plan yet, so
I understand
that's
that.
what I'm.
I'm
if
going
you
to
wanna-
propose we put 50,000 in there for
Okay.
16, 17. Is the council okay with that?
Yeah,
I'm fine.
Hmm.
Sure.
And then
Yeah.
don't spend it if we don't need it.
All right.
All right.
Or if we don't like what you find. But we might. So I have a question.
Okay, of this, any more of this section?
Yeah.
Councilmember Mueller.
The GIS mapping. We've got a lot of money in there. I know this is very valuable. I agree with it. I just have a question regarding the Veterans Home. Is any of this, I know a lot of our mapping's all been in town. I'm not trying to say map all of that up there. I just want to do we have perimeter monuments so that we know where our town limits run up there for sure or not? And is that part of this, and does that cost a lot?
We are in a different, further down the list here, we're still into mid-program into installing and checking all of the monuments in town. So we're establishing a monument book.
Okay.
However, that is, I think, a different question than what you're asking. But once we get that monument book established, we can then use that to map the polygon that are the town limits with our GIS map.
When's is that going? I'm just saying, if something ever,
We should
anything
be-
changes at the veterans home, I don't, if we have our data in first, here are the town limits up there. It just seems like since we're doing a lot of GIS work, that my first question is that a plan, or is what you described, and when is that going to happen?
So your question is fairly timely. We just established a new monument at the driveway at the golf course. So that monument had not previously existed. If it had, we hadn't been able to locate it. So the surveyor was out earlier last week, set up a couple of points for us. We have to dig the well for them, and then they're going to come back and reset the monument. So we are well on our way to establishing that perimeter that you're discussing.
Okay.
Once that perimeter is established by the surveyor, we can then use that to put in a map, a layer.
Okay, so we'll really know where the boundaries are up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if I can project, maybe one of the reasons that you're asking the question is because we have recently heard of a kind of renewed interest in the programming and services and living conditions present at the home based on the new leadership of Calvet. We want to make sure that we're clear in our definitions of what they might be interested in reviewing and
What's within
evaluating,
town limits,
and
right.
what's our property and what's their property.
Right, because it is confusing up there. I mean, it started out as 910 acres, and then poof, a bunch of went away, and now there's 650, and do we really know where our property line is?
We will establish that by the end of this year. I've
Okay,
had
good.
some long discussions with our new surveyor. That program has been going on for a couple of years now, but by the end of this year, we should have most of those points well established.
Okay.
And as all of you, I'm sure, are well aware, there's lots of surveying errors in this town, and most people who buy homes here now are getting their lot surveyed because of some of those errors where people said, just move the fence here or there, and it ends up they're actually on somebody, they're not maybe entirely on their property. So it has a benefit to the residents here in town as well, so that they can take a survey without taking an inordinate amount of time or money to find out where those monuments are at. So it's dual purpose.
Are we ready to go on to drainage and flood control? Okay, let's do it.
Drainage and flood control, Washington Street at Padroni. So as the north end of town is developed, we have started to discover some areas in Old Town that are now, or may have always been holding water, but now are holding even more water. One of those areas is about mid-block on Padroni, just around the corner from Jessup Cellars. Once the water ponds up there, it spills across the crown of the street and runs into the front yard of the south side of the street, and then kind of runs down along the side of the yard and transitions towards Hopper Creek. What we're going to try to do with this project is put a storm drain in and tie into the storm drain at Jefferson Street. So we can eliminate that ponding and eventual flooding of somebody's yard. Underground drainage on Monroe Street. This is another one of those projects from Old Town. So apparently one of the more unique drainage areas in this part of town is it runs through part of our drainage runs through somebody's front yard. So what we're proposing to do with this project is put a culvert in and enclose that and create a better drainage situation. And then that drainage will dump out into the ditch that runs along parallel to the cemetery and out onto Yont Mill Road. Drainage inlet trash capture. This is a part of a BASMA Phase 2 program that we are now in here in Napa County, where we are required to capture 100% of the trash before it goes into streams or creeks. I'm fortunate enough to have worked at an agency that installed 600 of these out of the 5,600 catch basins that we had at my former agency. They're rather easy to maintain. They're fairly inexpensive to install. We are right now working with Napa County Flood Control to help us identify where these devices would go. We have a 10-year window to install them. We're proposing to install somewhere in the neighborhood of a 10 to 15 per year to meet that requirement. So at the end of that 10-year span, we would be in full compliance and not have to do the other methods that would be way more onerous.
So that has to be our capital, our general fund money. It can't be flood.
It can be, well, a Measure A sunsets, and we can use some flood control money if there is available. That is one of the funds that should be available to us for a short period of time, but we're not going to have. We probably will be required to use some general fund money to run this program out towards the end, towards year 10.
Seems like this is a grant-funded.
We did have some grant money
also.
in phase one at my prior agency. It didn't fund everything, but it funded 500 of them for the place I was at. So we're looking for, that's a question I asked when I got here, how much grant money is going to be available. So seems like MTC and ABAG are trying to come up with a way to fund the phase two agencies, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to get some of that funded.
Okay.
Next slide. Pedestrian path from Oak
If I
Circle.
could, Joe, that actually is a really good question. That's also why we're not advancing and doing a whole lot of the installation up front, because if we went and funded a significant portion of the devices early and the grant program comes out,
we don't
had
get
that circumstance. So
we're
taking a measured approach, and if the grant program becomes available, we could accelerate the number that we do based on the grant.
We did have a much larger number in this program in earlier years, but when we found out, number one, we were going to be allowed 10 years to fully execute the program, and that the town manager is correct, we thought there might be some grant funding available, so rather than go all at it, we're going to portion it out and see what other kinds of devices they come up with that may be more efficient and more effective, and what kind of grants they have to accompany those devices.
And also if the flood control district could potentially help with funding.
That's what we're hoping.
Okay. Parks and Rec?
Parks and Rec, PK 003. Pedestrian path from Oak Circle to Mission. So this is a multi-year project. It's a grant-funded project. We've been working on it a little bit this year, trying to get some design elements. It's going to take off from what is the new Oak Circle Park. A bridge will land on the ad hoc property. The path will run parallel to Hopper Creek on the west side of Hopper Creek down to the path at Mission. This year is permitting and more design and right-of-way acquisition and construction slated for 17-18. The fencing at Vandeleur Park. This fencing has run to the end of its service life. What we're proposing to do is bring a couple of different choices, both to Parks Rec Advisory Committee and to the Town Council, and give them a couple of choices, and then go from there. This is one of the choices is going to be a picket fence, similar to what you see that's existing. And we think the other choice is going to be what we see around town more often now, which is the welded wire mesh fence with the redwood top and bottom rail. We think it's a real clean look, and that's probably going to be another choice. So we're looking for something that's going to be lower maintenance, kind of a clean look, and something that's going to last a little bit longer than what we have there now.
Aren't those typically about 5 or 6 feet tall, though?
They go well. You can size them anywhere from 3 foot to 6 foot. So we have some versions that are at around Oak Circle that are.
They don't want a 5 foot.
No, I was going to say, if you go look at
wire
Oak Circle,
fence
those
along
are 3
Vandeleur
feet.
Park.
Oak Circle's 3.
Okay.
The park is 6. We have some over here at Hopper Creek at Girardi Place that's around 4 feet. So they're infinitely sizable, and we can scale them to match pretty much what's existing. We're not going to kind of do too much in the way of change of that size, the height. Parks restroom floors. This is a safety and sanitary program to help us manage the park restrooms floors. We have some with paint on them, some with nothing but bare concrete, and what we're proposing to do is put a non-skid epoxy-coated surface that will last much longer, be easier to clean, and will be slip and skid resistant. That will be for all the parks. All 4 of our parks have restrooms. Veterans Memorial Park renovations. The council has heard about this program. We have had some long discussions with the landscape architect from the Veterans Affairs State of California. We will be bringing forward a design in the next month or so, and at that point, we will be asking you to approve, and we will move forward based on your feedback for this park. Parks and Rec, recreation utility vehicles. So Parks and Rec have a couple of very small utility vehicles right now, neither of which can carry the payload or go the kind of distance that Parks and Rec team would like their vehicle to be able to manage for them. So what we're proposing to do is buy a used electric utility vehicle similar to a Ford Escape Hybrid or something in that same size and style, and see how that works for them. Surveys and monuments books. This is ST. So we're now any questions on the PK section or the DF drainage?
Councilmember Durham.
Real quick, I'm sorry. So you have PK is so you have major park equipment repair and replacement and Vineyard Park outdoor exercise equipment, correct? It's not in this one, but it's in the other one?
It's in the detail, Joe. The council's referring to the master. Joe's giving you a synopsis of some of the key projects.
If I need, I can wait. Then
Well,
if
I'm
you
just
want to
saying,
get through
he's
which is fine.
What question? I need to hear.
It's all right. No, I'm saying I can wait till we do the
No,
overview
now is
here.
appropriate. What he's referring to, Joe, is in your short version, you did not address the some of the everything that's in the 5-year plan.
Got you.
Right. So I was just.
If you look at your hard copy, you have park outdoor exercise equipment.
Right.
That's a 17-18 item. Same category as the outdoor fitness center, waiting to see what the Park and Rec master plan study, and also some of the programs that are just simply funding equipment replacement funds. We haven't gone into great detail because that's just putting the funding structure in to pay for projects in the future.
I was
But
just.
you will see, I think that's a good point, Councilmember Durham, is the Public Works Director is highlighting this year and what we considered new items that have not been in the 5-year plan before.
Right.
So I apologize if that hopefully will explain. The detail is all in that second chart that you're
So does
going
that clarify?
Yeah, I think we introduced this last year, Councilmember Durham, and that's why I didn't discuss it, but I'm happy to discuss it now. So this Vineyard Park outdoor exercise equipment, what we're anticipating is something that looks like it's made for indoor use. However, it is actually made and designed to be used outdoors. We would probably place it where the soft yoga mat is out at Vineyard Park, out near the restrooms there by the tennis courts. Probably something in the range of 3 to 5 pieces of equipment. It's pretty slick stuff. The Parks and Rec director had a few pictures and some brochures that she brought back from a conference, and we put it in last year based on that feedback that she'd had from some of the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee and other members of the community.
That was my main question, because we've seemed to be changing equipment out at Vineyard Park every couple of years.
There is nothing at Vineyard Park.
And correct, now there isn't, but there was next to the tennis courts, which are constantly being redone as well.
I'll go back and address those. There was playground equipment removed. The tennis courts were renovated about 5 years ago. So there was a very small children's playground area, and that area equipment was taken out. Some was moved up to the park, and then we took and finished that area and kept it for an outdoor exercise. So you will see people stretching. This is just a question, again, it falls into that same long-range planning, because we probably would not do both an indoor fitness center and the outdoor. It's a question of what's there. But the other projects you're referring to, I'm going to say the tennis courts were probably done 4 years ago. The playground equipment was removed probably 5. And then we just did the improvements that you all saw with the ADA accessibility. So really, this would be the last area, and this park has more of an adult focus with the tennis court and the basketball. Well, I shouldn't say, but it has a little bit more than a toddler.
Well, we concentrated the children's activities up at Yountville Community Park is what we did.
And people do use the half. The
Yeah,
tennis
mostly.
court has a utilization. The basketball court has some utilization.
There's a snaky
all of our
ditch.
pardon?
There's a snaky
Right.
ditch to hang out
There
in.
is a small constituency for every amenity we have in a park. And there's also a constituency that would say, mine's more important and what I want to use it for should be a higher. And part of our job, along with the Park and Rec Advisory Commission, is to look at some of those trends and changes. For example, we're going to be evaluating opportunities to also use the outdoor tennis courts for pickleball.
Right. I'm going to bring it back to the question.
That's
You're satisfied
fine.
with
But-
your answer?
And then just one other quick question. The $60,000 for pool replacement has been discussed already?
I think it was just mentioned that some of these are anticipated equipment and other changes or maintenance projects that were previously budgeted, and so he's not highlighting those.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that are being highlighted are new or either new in the CIP or accelerated in the schedule.
Correct.
So if he's not addressing it, it's not that.
Happy to
they're not-
answer your question, though.
No,
Councilmember.
that's
Are you more
fine.
confused now?
No, my love of children is well known. I love the pool and the outdoor equipment. We can go on.
Okay. Any other questions on this section?
A quick one.
Okay, Councilmember Moeller.
PK 0003, the pedestrian path. So this was, originally we had a grant, we thought, for this, but that kind of fell through.
We still do. That's back on again.
Oh, it's back on
Yes.
again? There,
We've been
that's
assured
my
by
answer.
Napa Valley
All right.
Transportation Authority that we were one of the first ones to kind of get the nod that we probably would get our funding because basically it was such a small number that it wasn't helping them get to their big number. So
I mean, the $758 million shortfall?
Right. So
From the
some of
gas
the bigger
tax.
projects in Napa County were at risk, but our $500,000 or $600,000 project, because of how it's big for us, but small in terms of what the mayor has alluded to, wasn't helping them get to that number. So
Could move it up before they change their mind again.
that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get it built.
Well, the gas tax isn't getting fixed anytime soon, so
I know, but
they're going to be
you never know.
hurting.
So
Okay,
get
I think
going.
we can we move on?
Move on.
Move down the road?
Streets Survey Monument. So this was what Councilmember Moeller had talked about, and this would be a continuing project. I have been assured by our new surveyor that we should have a complete survey and monument book by the end of this year. So that's going to be good news. I have left 1718 with the same amount of money in case we discover some issue that causes us to go into the next fiscal year. But I anticipate reducing that. We will have an ongoing program for this so that we'll be able to do any surveys that we may need to do as a town for projects or
Land
our
issues.
facilities. Next slide. Hopper Creek Big Bridge Rail. This is another multi-year project. It's in design this year. Next year, it's going to be in construction. So this would be the bridge rail at Washington Street at the French Laundry Gardens, at our Hopper Creek Pocket Park, and also on Jefferson, just downstream from that same location.
Burgundy Commons.
Very, very old guardrails.
Right, it goes north-south on Washington.
The picture he's showing is Jefferson Street.
That's
Yeah,
the
that's
Jefferson location
Yeah,
on that one.
that's Jefferson Street location by the Knight residence. ST0015, Yountville Crossroads Street reconstruction. We had hoped that this road would last a couple of years into Measure T before we needed to go into reconstruction. However, the last round of winter weather has opened up potholes already. It's going to continue to degrade, and we're going to continue to struggle to maintain it. And so we have advanced this project into the upcoming fiscal year, $600,000. We have some pretty good numbers based on reconstruction of Adams and Monroe. We're also going to do a water line as a part of this project as well.
The only comment is you keep adding some things and moving around. I'm going to go back with Joe and Maria and make sure we have the financial capacity to do all those things, so I just want that caveat. I may look at a short 2-year borrowing just to get this project completed. I'm worried a little bit about cash flow. I'll just share that because we've got 2 large projects that we're covering right now, which is we've just spent $600,000 on the flood wall that I need to get back from FEMA. So I'll feel a lot more comfortable when the money is back in the bank.
I think we've only moved about 100,000.
I know, but I've got to look at the total and everything.
Okay.
So I'm just letting you know that's, I feel it's doable. I'm not saying it's
Okay.
not. It's just.
Let's get through this section before, and then we'll ask questions.
Okay.
Or are we through this section?
Next slide.
No, that was, did you finish on the
Oh,
600,000?
so one of the things I would like to say
Crossroad?
about the street reconstruction is the town manager and I have been discussing a couple of alternatives. One of which is to have a Class 1 bike lane similar to what you see at R&D, either on the north or south side of Yountville Crossroad, which we would then try to realign the road, push it one way or the other. Not sure if we're going to be able to do that because of the constraints of the utility lines and some other constraints that we have. We are also looking at trying to provide some undergrounding infrastructure in advance of any undergrounding project that may go on. We're not getting a lot of help from PG&E in terms of what we could provide that would help expedite any undergrounding or help maybe remedy some dig up that would otherwise cause the road to be need to be reconstructed after they're done.
So in this area, we may be looking at just installing empty conduits for the run so that we wouldn't have to tear up the street.
Mm.
You know, 'cause
So the bike lane, I mean, it only runs for a couple hundred yards, so what's the point?
1,300 feet. Well, we're just looking at it because we thought it would be a nice addition for the residents in town if we could keep them on the neighborhood side of the road, because that's mainly the residents are going to be using that area. I'm not sure if we can do it, Mayor. It's from an engineering standpoint, it's a pretty tough go.
Yeah, and then the fact that Talent and Mesa are private roads, does that have any impact on our ability to just go in and resurface the edges of those private roads?
It shouldn't, no, and actually, we have water infrastructure that's going to need to be tied in there when we improve the water infrastructure on Yountville Crossroads, so we're going to probably at least pave into where we tear up on their road to tie into the water line that goes into both Talent, Mesa, and Staggs View.
Any questions about this section, Vice Mayor?
I have just one comment. I mean, I've had, since we've had Fennell closed for all the work that's been done, I've been commuting on the Crossroad to get to my place of employ, except when I'm on my bicycle. And I will say that it's in need of repair.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is a smart one to push up and get out in front of us, even if we have to digest it a bit. It's a big
It's
deal.
arterial, and for those of you who may be surprised to hear this, every truck that goes down that road is equivalent to 8,700 cars. So for every truck you see, it's like 8,700 car trips on that road. And there's an awful lot of trucks that use that to get back and forth between Highway 29 and Silverado Trail. So that's what's causing the main damage, that along with the recent spate of wet weather.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, to that point, is there any county funding available at all, or they just consider, even though we're only a section of that, it's all our problem?
It's ours, and I asked the county if they wanted to kind of partner up and do a rubberized asphalt on the other section, and they don't have any plans to do that section at this time. So I'm looking to the city of Napa and some other agencies to maybe at least partner up and get a rubberized asphalt grant. It's a small grant, but it would help a little bit.
Okay, Vice Mayor.
Just a follow-on question. So would the road go from basically where it terminates now at Yount all the way down to the town limits, or is it?
Yep,
Okay.
all the way to town limits. That's our plan.
So past Staggs View?
Past Staggs View.
By just a little bit there.
Yeah. Yep. And then
Councilor?
we'd be good for another, that road would then be designed to be a 25-year road. So.
Thank you.
With a little bit of
Councilor
maintenance for the last 25 years.
So since we're on the street subject, I know our new, was it Measure T that
Measure
starts
T.
in 2018?
Right.
I just wanted to throw it out basically for an FYI to the council and for us to think about all this. And it's about garbage, but it relates to the streets. Garbage trucks the story goes, does about 25% damage to all of our streets because they're big and heavy. We kind of just talked about that. We are able to add a franchise fee based on the JPA of the garbage company that we're in. And Calistoga has a 6% franchise fee, so 6% is added basically to the ratepayers. They collect that money and it goes in the general fund, but they typically use it for streets and kind of depending on what else they need. Napa, which is in a different JPA, they have a 10% franchise fee that they use specifically for using in the roads. Yeah. I don't really know if we've done calculations how much money we're going to get from Measure T. I'm just throwing this out there. If anybody is interested, we have that option. So
I think that's a great idea. And we think the Measure T money is going to be somewhat equal to what we see with Measure A. So in the range of $300,000 to $400,000 a year. That's probably a pretty good benchmark.
So.
Any other questions about streets and roads? Okay, moving on.
Next slide. SCADA improvements. So with the upgrade to our wastewater treatment plant, we have had many SCADA improvements. Some of these were driven by our permit conditions, and some of them were driven by the equipment that we installed. So we are starting to recognize that SCADA has helped our team out at the wastewater treatment plant not only manage the system better and remotely, but also be able to do things that we had never been able to do previous to this, including the treatment chemicals and the kinds of things that we're able to do. So it's pretty exciting for us and the treatment staff, and we're anticipating this program for 2021. Next slide. Water main. So now we're into water. We recognize that the wastewater program has been under a little bit of pressure, and we tried to keep the CIP for wastewater down to what our permit required and down to what's absolutely essential, which is why we're only proposing the one new program for this year on wastewater side, and now we're into the water side, which brings us to Yountville Crossroads water main replacement. This will be done in conjunction with the Yountville Crossroads reconstruction. It will include a new water line from Yount Street all the way to Staggs View Lane, and then in a future project we may pick up that water line and take it down to our regulator pit relocation, which will be in future years. I think 2018, 2019 is when we're looking to do that. But this one will replace the water line that we were under the road we're going to reconstruct. Water quality improvements and blow-off. So as you recall, last year we had the No-Des Valve Tech company in to help us clear the sand out of our system and do a bit of flushing while returning the clean water back into our system. One of the benefits of that program was we found a whole bunch of valves that we hadn't exercised and didn't even know existed, and we also found some parts of our system that have dead ends and don't have a blow-off. So in the water system, distribution system world, that's not a good thing. Water tends to get stagnant. It picks up odors and taste, and more importantly, causes us problems when we turn it into the lab for testing. So having recognized that, this program would install a few blow-offs, maybe in the form of a hydrant, but certainly somewhere where we can run some water through the system and get clean, fresh water into those dead ends. That's $70,000. The next two slides are a list of programs that were on all of the slides that you've seen. So they include our equipment replacement funds, the ADA accessibility improvements program, our heavy equipment replacement fund, town-wide drainage. So all of the programs that we use to fund equipment replacement and ongoing annual programs. Next slide. This slide finishes that up, mostly for streets, some sewer, and water with the same types of classifications, mostly for equipment replacement and annual programs that we fund out of these programs. That concludes my presentation for this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on the 2016-17 through 2021 capital improvements program for this.
Well, I think the water and wastewater are the only two sections we haven't already.
That's correct, Mayor.
Gotten covered. So questions about those last two sections, Councilmember Dornbecker.
I just wondered if at the wastewater treatment plant we have started the photovoltaic.
We have just
I
had
didn't see that.
Your timing is really good. We just had a meeting with after a very long time, as you well know, based on the presentation we had earlier this month. We had problems with the funding of the program. Well, once that got in place and you approved the program, we met with the contractor earlier this week. The deputy director walked to 3 sites. Actually, the treatment plant is probably going to be the easiest of the 3 sites to manage. So they anticipate having the design in fairly quickly, and by the end of the summer, we may have photovoltaic system in at the wastewater treatment plant and the pump station. The parking lot at the community center is a much more complicated design, and we'd like to take that to ZDRB as well because of the design elements that are included. So that might take a few months longer, but certainly by the end of this year, they're thinking they're going to have them online.
And one clarification to your comment that you didn't see it in the CIP. Remember, the council's authorized us to enter into a PPA, a public-private participation agreement, for power purchase in this case. So we will not be funding this. The private sector will be funding it consistent with the agreement, and then we will be entering or paying them back over time with a guaranteed purchase of power at a set rate. So that's why you won't see it as a line item with our expense, because we won't be managing that outcome. We'll be managing the agreement.
The other, there was a couple of unfunded items that I meant to discuss as a part of this discussion as well. One of them was the undergrounding project. I met with the PG&E representative earlier this year. We discussed trying to underground the area around Yountville Community Park. It came in at about $1.7 million. And we have $186,000 in the Rule 20A account. Excuse me. PG&E's policy is that they can't even talk to you about a Rule 20A unless you have $500,000 of work to do in the account. So we're trying to figure out a way to leverage that $186,000 either by borrowing credits from someone or loaning our credits to another.
Let me make one clarification, Joe. You said $186,000 a year. It's actually that's the aggregate balance.
That's what
we
the
only
total
get
is.
about 16 or 20.
20,000.
You said total.
$186,000 total.
So we're not getting close. At 500,000, we've got almost another.
Well, we only have 10%
30
of the
years,
project.
20 years.
10% of that one project.
10% of that one project. We would be funding that project in its entirety. We would be going out and we will not be funding that project in its entirety.
Undergrounding, so.
I just want to make sure we get
Yeah,
questions
it's-
on the water and wastewater. Any additional questions there?
Just, when are we going to, we've been on water restrictions this whole past year. I have a strong feeling that it's going to be reflective in how much revenue we get on that side. When are we going to know what our water charges have been from the home, and if they're going to be charging us?
That's always a good question that the finance director and the public works director kind of bounce around, and it's a hard number to pin down this year.
Because that's really the problem that all these water districts are having because of all the cutbacks. They're all, when they're, really taking a look at their numbers, they're all falling, drastically short. So when do I start worrying about that?
We're
Right now,
not as our bill isn't as dependent on.
I know because we have a pretty high, but we might even want to raise it higher.
Because of where our source.
Fix, right.
We're not as subject to those wide swings of that commodity.
So the numbers in your monthly financial report are looking pretty good in terms of revenues. 62 as of the end of February, 62.7% at 66% of the year. And for wastewater, it's 61.5%. So
those are all projected. We don't really have real numbers.
Those are
compared to
actuals.
projected.
We have, right.
So that's the actual for the year.
The real question for us is going to be, what is the new rate that the Veterans Fund
That's
is
my
going to
question,
charge?
yeah. I know that we bill, but we just don't know.
Councilmembers ask.
We don't get
Right.
that until after
Right.
our fiscal
Right,
year
so
is
the
over.
true-up happens later. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it happens in August.
Right.
So then that's when we have to
That
sort
sounds
of
right.
adjust.
It's always a little bit tough,
But-
even in good years, to pin down the vets home on what that number is.
So no conversation going with them now. Are they anticipating that because of these decreases in water everybody's using by 25%, that everything's going to be just fine?
I'm going to assume that we're going to see an increase a little bit, to be honest, but they have a lean staff, their water usage, our water usage. They're doing some projects, as we shared with you, to try to reduce some of their fixed costs, like looking at solar as well. But yeah, I have a concern that we may have a 15 or 20% rate increase in water. But we won't know that.
Be clear what you just said. What we're being charged by the Veterans Home for our water. When you say a 15% increase in water, if that gets misconstrued by the public, that's not the message we want.
Correct. We're not talking about a rate increase. We are talking about the amount
cost
that we are
increase to us.
charged
Or true up.
to buy. So we just won't know that. And that's why when we go into our rate study, we use a 10-year average and then adjusted for inflation, because if you remember, this is how the graph looks.
Well, we made the assumption it was going to be 7 to 7.5% increase every year, and then we could, because we had to pick a number to set the
Right.
rates.
We're not going to know that for several months.
So right now,
we're going to go on those projections we've done every year.
And we're not as subject to that swing as other agencies would be that are out on.
That don't
for
have
instance,
a
in
high
North Bay
fixed
Aqueduct.
costs like we do. All right.
Vice Mayor, you had another question on this section?
Just a couple of quick comments, and the first are, thank you, Joe, for putting this together. I just want to note that the wastewater and water reclamation, or the WW accounts, are all funded through an enterprise fund.
Correct.
As are the water distribution accounts, WA. So those are not necessarily associated with the general CIP that the town is
That's
funding.
correct.
It comes out of the ratepayers.
Right, and if you notice that matrix that you're looking at, the green Excel spreadsheet, we split that all out based
Right.
on the enterprise fund and general fund and gas tax. And
I'm just making sure everyone else is clear.
Okay.
The last thing I would say is that in reviewing this, the one thing we have to remember as a council and as a responsible agency is that in the last 5 years, we've spent about $20 million to round it up. You're projecting at this juncture, even if we moved projects forward, we're looking at about $8.9 million. And the reason that we still have $8.9 million in these kinds of projects is because we've taken the time to properly plan the infrastructure needs of the community and put those first. And that's why we spent $20 million. But I don't want anyone out there to think that only projecting $9 million in spend is a bad thing. The rationale is that we've made the decisions in the past to be able to fund the activities that we're doing now and not have to go out and find another $4 to $5 million to do things. So, this is a really nice projection for us to look back 5 years and see what we've spent, and now to look forward and say, we don't have these big, these big ugly monsters in front of us that we haven't funded.
You're seeing a leveling out, as I would describe. The mayor likes to refer to all of the construction message trailers and the construction signs, but we've used the down economy and tried to leverage our revenue stream while we've had it to make significant improvements. And we're going to be leveling out on our infrastructure, and we are being very disciplined in asset management programs. We're trying to get better at making sure that we have the resources. That's why when you see those programs for equipment replacement funds, that's why hopefully in the future, a council is going to be able to allocate the money from that pot in 2025 or 2045, when the community center needs a new roof. The fund balance will be there,
Right.
and they'll be less dependent on the annual general fund revenue. That takes a discipline on our part, the council's part, staff part, to put that set aside away every year, so when those expenses come up. But that's what we're doing, and I think you're correct. We'll have a little less construction activity, but we really are completing a rather robust capital infrastructure improvement and really putting the plans going forward that are really going to help future councils and staff.
And the residents of this community.
Benefit, yep.
So I've got one more question specifically to WA 8, Yountville Crossroad water main replacement, and just the resurfacing of it, and I'll go back to the resurfacing of that stretch. That's going to be a very delicate scheduling of that project. Do we have any idea when we're trying to implement that project yet?
Right now, the timeline calls for sometime after harvest, so it would be late October. Just the timing of the design, the bidding process, the council approval process would get us into late October and early November. It's a pretty tight timeline.
After Fennell is finished.
After Fennell is finished.
Well, that's-
Fennell will be finished, well, we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes.
So is that scheduling completely up to us?
That scheduling is completely up to us.
So we just have to do significant diligence valley-wide for special events, for delays in harvest season, any of that kind of stuff. With this kind of arterial, we don't have many options.
Yeah, we anticipate traffic using Fennell and then using a wide range of messaging to help other traffic recognize that the road's going to be impacted and choose other routes.
I mean, the north end just went through this with Madison, and so
Right.
this is like the other foot. So, okay.
Good news is they'll be done for 25 years, Mayor, once this road gets reconstructed. Trying to put the good news on there.
Any final questions? We've asked plenty, I think, at this point. We probably don't even need those budget workshops any longer.
Reschedule them then.
We've got dates open for them, but very good. That was a very thorough workshop on CIP. So, do you need any additional direction from us?
No, we'll take the feedback, and there's two things that will happen at a later date. One, you will see the first year as an extension of the annual operating budget, and then we'll bring back the full 5-year for full adoption.
Okay, we are moving on. Staff informational reports. We have more?
Well, I'm not done yet.
We have hogging the spotlight tonight, Joe.
Yountville Community Park? Yep. All right. Well, I have good news to report on our parks. This will be the last report for Yountville Community Park because that park is finished. I'm sure all of you have seen it at this point, but we moved the picnic tables back onto it today, and we're going to work with the Parks and Rec director this week to get those placed so that it works for her programming. We're working to choose some barbecues that work for that area, including one large one and possibly a couple of smaller ones, but the park is essentially complete. We think it came out great. A really nice looking fence. The terrapave came out great, and the mature trees are going to be a really nice addition this fall. Oak Circle Park is also coming along with the final pours in place for the path, and the brick paver area is almost complete, probably complete by the end of today, actually. So they will start with planting and then get right into the parking improvements. They hope to be done by the end of this month as well. That completes the parks report. Any questions on either of the two parks?
No. Water conservation.
Water conservation report. Happy to report that for the month of March, we were 28% less than we had used in. I'm sorry, we were 28% down for the year, 19% difference from 14, and 33% difference from our benchmark year of 2013. So we are well ahead of the state average. I've been reading some reports, and it's not clear right now what the governor is going to do with the continuing drought. We anticipate that he's going to extend it even past his October date, and when we have better information at the end of this month, we'll come back with a recommendation for the council to consider and give us some direction on. As a part of our conservation effort, we had the California Conservation Corps out last week with town staff. We tore out turf in 4 areas. The one you're looking at here is at Vineyard Park. They installed drought-tolerant landscape and drip irrigation systems. We also did the same thing at what we're calling Landy Path, the area between Yount and Washington Square neighborhood. We're going to add a couple of trees to give this some height, but it's the same treatment. This particular piece was designed by a landscape architect because it was such a large area, and it has drip irrigation as well. The third slide is the path from Bardesano into the Heritage neighborhood.
Trowbridge.
Got a couple of nice trees in there as well, and in total I think we removed over 7,000 square feet of turf. So we're quite proud of that. And we also removed a little piece of turf up by the pool. That was the fourth area. So California Conservation Corps was here for a little bit more than a week. They also helped us trim up some of the vegetation at Veterans Memorial Park. So all in all, we think that was a great project. We will be getting cash for grass back for removing that turf because we are ratepayers in the water system. Each of those had water meters, and we will be expecting a rebate from the Cash for Grass program that will go back into the fund. That completes the water conservation report. Any questions on that?
No, very good. Good news. Hopper Creek.
Hopper Creek. Happy to say that the three 36-inch pipes have reached their destination. They are working on sidewalk subgrade right now, working their way from the east to the west end of the project with street lights and sidewalks scheduled for the next in the next week and a half. Probably by next Friday, you'll start to see some sidewalk going in. They call for completion of the project by the end of April, including all the paving. The driveway at Girardi was restored by PG&E's, half of it was restored by PG&E's contractor yesterday. They will be out next week to restore the other half. It's a really nice stamped concrete, and we think it's going to be well received by those neighbors who have been inconvenienced for the last several months with a really torn up driveway. So we're starting to see the restoration that we knew would come eventually, and I'm sure that most of you sitting up there are happy to see it.
It wasn't pavers before?
It wasn't pavers.
It was stamped
concrete.
It was stamped concrete, yeah.
That's it for the Hopper Creek project. Any questions?
Questions? So what kind of traffic control are we still looking at for this project?
There will be some intermittent closures, but for the most part, it's probably going to be partial lane closures, but no, the road should not be closed except for when they're going to do Girardi Place. They're going to need to close that road again to get the trucks in and out of there. But for the most part, that road should be mostly open. There's going to be some intermittent closure, but it should be open.
All right, today was like only local traffic, but it was really kind of closed.
Yeah.
East.
Yeah.
Well, they were
west
repaving.
of Fennell.
They were digging across the street. They had some water work, and there's PG&E is going to come back for one more portion of their work at Vista at Fennell. They have to come back and do a little bit more work on their 2-inch. Put a seal sleeve over the 2-inch at the storm drain where it crosses the storm drain.
So
it'll be closed in.
they have to get in here before the sidewalk.
Correct.
And so
Yeah.
how are we making sure that they
They're
don't
scheduled
screw
to
this
be in
project up again?
Yeah, they're scheduled to be in next Wednesday.
There you go.
And we need to get on that letter, by the way,
But
to PG&E.
we are working on it, Mayor. We actually met with our project manager last week. They're developing a timeline and a list of delays, and we're going to review that with the town manager, and then we're going to send off the claims to and our town attorney, and then we're going to send off a claim to PG&E. So we anticipate having that report done, at least the portion from the project manager, the middle of this week to the end of this week. So, and then we'll go over it, finalize it, work with the town manager and the town attorney, and then get it to PG&E.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've already talked to Mark Van Gorder or not, but I wouldn't mind giving him a heads up because I don't think Mark has been the problem. He's just, unfortunately, the messenger for most of this, I think, unless you feel otherwise. But I just want to make sure that we get to the right people that are responsible for the delays and the overruns.
He introduced us to the claims manager. She actually sat in our last 3 meetings that we had with PG&E. So
they're preparing for this.
I don't think that they will be surprised that we are filing a claim because we kind of indicated that we were leaning in that direction earlier in the project.
Okay. Any other questions about any of the reports? All right. Do you have anything more to say tonight, Joe?
No, thank you. I'm tapping out.
You might be more exhausted than climbing Veeder on your bike. All right. Meeting reports. Only those that are absolutely necessary. Flood control. I'm not sure that there's, let's see. They're putting money in upgrading the early flood warning system. And let's see. Watershed program budget of $1.6 million, including Napa River maintenance, and the 9 watershed. There are 9 watershed management projects. That's been a very hot topic lately with the winery development in the watershed areas. Also, just quickly, there was a city selection meeting before the flood control, and I was named the alternate for ABAG's executive board, with Mayor Garcia from American Canyon remaining as the primary on that executive board. But with all that's going on with ABAG and MTC, having a voice on there is remaining quite important. That's it for flood. NVTA, I don't even know that there was we have a meeting coming up in a week. I don't remember there being any critical issues to bring up from the last meeting. Upper Valley Waste Management, do we have anything that's absolutely critical to go over?
Yes, because there's money that probably needs to get spent. They're requesting $2 million that's going to be used for purchasing a new truck, and they want to move and expand what we call the C&D line. It's construction and demolition up at the landfill. They want to move and expand that. We'd like to spend $2 million on those 2 items. Next, and that's for this year. Possibly, we haven't discussed that in totally. And next year, they want to buy a grinder for $1.2 million, so we can add our food waste to our green waste and reduce greenhouse gases. So, right now, the agency only has $250,000 out of the $3.2 million in the bank. So we're trying to figure out how to get more money, because I don't really think we should hit the ratepayers with that all at once. So stay tuned.
Okay. I did want to recognize the Chamber of Commerce and all the volunteers and the town staff's role in Taste of Yountville this last weekend, and also the Yountville Live Music Festival, the whole 4 days of that. They both, I think, went off with virtually no significant incidents, which was great. Thought the flow seemed very good throughout town. So I want to commend all the folks that put on those special events this last weekend. The tent is still up for folks that aren't familiar with why that might be. Live in the Vineyard is coming in this next week, and we'll be using the large white tent that's still on the future home of Handwritten tasting room next to Ranch Market. Any other reports, announcements that are timely? No? We did plant, one last thing. Joe, I thought maybe you'd cover this, but we did work together, council and Public Works and some of our Yountville youth, to plant a new heritage oak tree. We're going to need to make sure that that's in all these photos of the park going forward, but thanks to all of our blue shirts for helping carry that and prep that whole area, and then it's going to be a beautiful heritage oak right there along that view corridor. So thanks, and Carol and Samantha for getting some of our kids over there to help dig the hole and fill the hole back in.
Perfect.
Yes. So am I missing anything?
Yep, I have one more.
One more?
Before our next meeting on April the 18th, there's a preservation conference in San Francisco, and that's where we're going to hear about the final decision on this building that we're in being on the historic register. So if anybody else would like to go, I think there's going to be a carpool leaving from Yountville to San Francisco, April 18th.
Just found out there's a conflict with Napa Valley Vintners workshop that day, so we may have to divide and conquer on that
Well,
one.
then there's the Goose Cross thing that starts at 4. I don't know if we're going to be back in time for that with the vendors. So.
Okay. Councilmember Dornbecker?
Yes, on Wednesday, April 13th, the Yountville Women's Veterans are hosting their annual luncheon. And as we saw earlier, they are going to have a tribute to the World War II women veterans, of which there are 27 living up at the home. And it's really quite an impressive and exciting moment for them. And the county, the state, and Congressman Mike Thompson are all issuing what we did tonight, sending them their special regards, and so I'm very proud of them and excited to work with them. They're my special project up at the Veterans Home at the moment, or for the last 6 years. So anyway, it's fun to work with them. They're really amazing women.
That's a long moment.
Yeah.
6 years. Okay. With that, we do have a closed session item.
I have one other item.
You missed your staff report
No, this
section.
is not. This is one
Sorry.
I'm filling in because none of you mentioned the Arts Commission Art Sip and Stroll, which will be on April 16th on Saturday. So it's a great opportunity for $20 to come out. There'll be artists and local wine and an opportunity to stroll from the north to the south.
Well, I knew that you were working that Yountville Arts Commission meeting last night, so that would be one of your reports. Thank you. Any update on the underpass mural project? I know that was on the agenda.
We're simply at a stage right now where we're finalizing the contract for the design, and I anticipate the contract will be executed within 2 weeks, and then we will work with them on the initial public input process. They have it all scoped out, so it's actually pretty close to starting.
So I just wanted to be clear. They're not finishing a design. They're starting the process to design
I'll
it.
remind everybody, there is no design. When we
Right,
say
okay.
start the process, they start with stakeholder meetings
I
and
just want to
public
make,
workshops.
the way I heard it, it sounded a little bit like we're 2 weeks away from finishing the design
No. The first
process.
phase is simply the design development.
Okay.
And
Covered
then
that.
they have to raise the money.
Right.
The Arts Commission has enough money on hand to pay for the design development stage.
Right, okay. So with no other business, we do have a closed session item, and I don't believe we are anticipating any reportable action. No, we are not. So we're going to go into closed session with our next regular meeting scheduled for Tuesday, April 19th at 6 o'clock. If there is any reportable action, we'll announce it, but we do not anticipate it. So with that, thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.